Damn it. It still did it. The goddamn thing. It's not supposed to do that.
See?
Oh,
that just shows you how much work Jimmy did on the intro in the last week.
Yeah, that's true. I fixed the thing that I thought I was supposed to fix. All right. I'm just going to do the last 5 seconds of it again. I think I just finally figured out what I fixed wrong. There's too many buttons.
Welcome to Sunday.
That's right.
The show's so exciting you paid for the entire seat, but you'll only need the edge.
Look what else I messed up. Let me just fix that.
Oh, it's good stuff. And what's funny is, so I keep, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday show. I'm Matt. That's Jimmy. Let me finish my conversation, and then we'll invite all of you in. By the way, it's a call-in show. The number's down below. We'll be taking calls from people. But I have YouTube up and open so that I can occasionally look at chat. I don't want to get in the way of I Got Cookies or any of our other lovely, wonderful moderator people. But I like to see what's going on, and sometimes I'll answer, but most of the time I don't. But normally I have it muted. That intro song started playing in my vMix feed to me. Yeah. Then the YouTube started 30 seconds later, but it lined up beat-wise.
Word.
So I had this weird little echo, and the song works with itself 30 seconds delayed.
We got a row your boat style loop. Yeah, that number, 720-619-2288. There's also a web link in the description if you want to call from your computer, if that's where your superior audio is, or you're calling from out of the country. We want to hear from you about why you might believe in God, the supernatural, spirits, ghosts, apparitions. I'd take an astrology call. I'll always take an astrology call. Any sort of spirituality, any sort of religious belief. We want to hear why you hold those beliefs and also why perhaps we should hold those beliefs, especially those beliefs which come with these inherent threats. I'll tell you, before this show, I filmed something, found out that the audio cut out right in the last few minutes of it. So I'm going to have to re-record it, but I think you actually might find it entertaining. I went to ChatGPT, as you know I love to do, and I told ChatGPT what type of Christian personality to commit to, and then I had an in-text debate with ChatGPT on the existence of God and Christianity, and then I filmed both parts. I don't know if you noticed that I had the green screen set up behind me when you first got here, and it was because in vMix I could quickly switch between a version of me in a church versus me in a library, just by hitting a button and switching the sides. And anyway, it was tremendously fun. I gave ChatGPT a voice, which makes me mad that I'm gonna have to re-record it again because it took, I just sort of did a nerdy Ben Shapiro style impression for I'm calling it Christ GPT. I think it's gonna be an interesting, when I get it out, but that'll be in the days to come. But the debate was, it is extremely good at making you forget it's not a real Christian. It's real good at it. A William Lane Craig style.
Ridiculously easy. I would imagine, I would bet money. I'd bet a significant amount of money. I did a debate on Friday night. I just posted my debate review of it to patrons yesterday. By the way, I don't ever do this, but you can go to patreon.com/atheistdebates to support the work that I do in addition to what we're doing here live. But I posted that to patrons, and this is one of the longest debate reviews I've done in a while. I think it's like almost 50 minutes. Somebody's saying that the volume difference in our audio is significant. So
I'll have a look.
I hear us at exactly the same level, but if I need to adjust, I can adjust. But Jimmy can do it all. Anyway, I posted my debate review, and it's like 49 minutes. And I went through it in detail, basically showing what he did during his opening, what he should have done, and what you're supposed to do during your opening, why that was a problem. And I think there's more useful information for both sides in my debate review than there was during the debate. I think that was just, I would bet a significant amount of money that your Christ GPT is better at defending Christianity than the individual I named on Friday night. I debated on Friday night, not named. Oh, I can't hear you. You're muted. Now you're really quiet. Nope.
I shouldn't be muted.
There you are.
Okay. Something is, yeah. So whatever the problem was that stopped my recording earlier seems to have just jumped in here now too, which is also not an ideal situation. So hopefully that is not a continuing problem, but we shall see. I wouldn't be surprised either. I will say the thing that was the most frustrating was that it is extremely polite at a point where, like, after everything I would say, it would say something along the lines of like, those are very good challenges, or I understand why that would da-da-da. And it also wouldn't actually commit to any sort of level of Christianity of, it took on the persona of someone who thinks that as long as you are sincere in your skepticism, God will judge you fairly with that in mind. So you're not going to go to hell.
Weird.
Yeah, it took on an almost progressive, but while still saying, but then it would say things that were contrary, because it would talk about like a person who is a sincere seeker, but I'd bring up that like, well, because the Bible in James and Matthew and other places says any sincere seeker will get answers. There's no way to be a sincere seeker and not get a response from God, according to the Bible. So there's no way to be a sincere seeker and say that you don't believe in God, according to the Bible. And it wasn't very interested in those arguments very much. And it would just say outright things on faith and was a lot more honest than your average theist is as well.
Well, the video that I put up today, that I literally recorded a video and posted it 10 minutes before I logged in here. I'm live on that's not actually me live. I realize that the ACA keeps including me on live streams, and they will because they own the content and they can. I find it problematic and embarrassing, but it's cool. That just means that, if you don't like what I'm saying here, you can tune over somewhere else and like what I'm saying there. But here is better because this is actually live. I put up a video on my Highlander argument against Christianity. And I just want to say that for everybody who was sitting around, because I posted about it, waiting, I can't wait to see what the Highlander argument against Christianity is. It changed a lot. And it turned into something completely different, because in the process, here's what happens. If you construct an argument for a specific goal, you are, in almost every circumstance, leading the evidence where you want it to go. You are massaging things so that they make the point that you want to make. And, that's not entirely broken. But I don't want to be dishonest. And so where the argument originally was supposed to start about angels with swords, which is how I got to Highlander, it turns out if you go read the Bible, you don't really find any verse that specifically talks about any angel wielding a sword in that kind of clear language. What you get is in Genesis 3:24, I think, whatever it is, where they close off the Garden of Eden. There are some cherubim stationed out there and a sword that points in all directions. And even where, on the two occasions where it names the archangel Michael, who is always depicted, or almost always depicted, with a sword, it doesn't actually talk about the sword. And so that led me to revamp the argument and talk about, a number of different things. For patrons, it's up already. For everybody else, you'll get it in a day or two. It'll be on my YouTube. Anyway, apart from, fixing audio issues and getting set up for phone calls on networks, how are you feeling?
Well, now I'm feeling worried because it just happened a second time where I actually heard a blip and then my audio went away. And you know that I don't fuck around with audio issues. That shit drives me crazy. So, apprehensive. I think let's bring in the first caller and make sure that we can hear the first caller, and make sure that that's all working, because this is going to drive me fucking nuts if ends up being an ongoing issue. Tommy in Brazil, can you hear us? But I don't think Matt heard you. Let me see if I can reset this. Say something again, Tommy.
Hi.
Now I bet Matt. Okay, now Matt hears Tommy. So when my mic goes out and I have to hit the little reset thing, it also takes with it this, and I don't know why. So this is going to be a fun show that hopefully I figured out before things get too crazy. Anyway, Tommy, you're on the line with Jimmy and Matt. Go ahead. Let's hear it.
Hey guys. So I know 1 Peter 3:15 has been a pretty important verse for Matt, being debating Christians. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. But the rest of 1 Peter 3:15 through 16 commands Christians to be respectful and humble or gentle. Should we be calling them out on that, especially with this, what I call like new Christianity, the way they talk about new atheism, how Christians, especially online Christians, are just so aggressive and insulting?
Did it all go quiet, or was it at the end?
Hello?
Hey.
Sorry, yeah, I think it did go quiet. I think it did go quiet. But you were asking if we need to be calling out people for being aggressive and insulting.
Yes, particularly because the Bible commands them to be respectful and humble or gentle.
Yeah, I use 1 Peter 3:15, 3:15 and 16 a little bit, all the time, but mostly it's when they act like they're not required to defend their position, and so calling them out to actually defend it, which is, to be 1 Peter 3:15, for those who don't know, says to be prepared at all times to give the reason for the faith that's within you, and to do so with, depends on which version you're reading, meekness and fear, or gentleness and kindness, or it depends on the interpretation or the translation. And it specifically says for the Christians to do it this way, so that if somebody speaks against you, they are put to shame by the fact that you are good-mannered. And so the best way to look at it is when the atheists get up at you and get in your face, you just need to stay calm so that everybody watching can see the peace of Christ that runs throughout you. Is it worth calling them out when this doesn't happen? I think there is a usefulness to calling that out. In particular, there's this notion of, the Bible also says, by their fruits you shall know them. And if there are false converts out there preaching, one of the ways that you should potentially be able to tell is who can sit there with the comforting, I'm unplussed. You can't do anything to me. I have Christ flowing through me. The Holy Spirit is with me. I couldn't possibly get riled up. It might be worth pointing that out. I don't do it often, just because I care more about the burden of proof and what facts someone can present for their position. I have never been a style over substance person, which is why I get accused of being an asshole, a prick, all sorts of things all the time. So my opinion might not be the best one to seek out.
Right on. Thanks. When I was a Christian, if I had been called out for, being rude and, hurting my testimony or, my witness, that would have hurt me.
Yeah.
And I just felt like when I see Christians, particularly your debate a couple of days ago, when I was a Christian and seeing how folks like him and a lot of other apologists nowadays, how they behave, as a Christian, I would have been critical and called them out on it. So right on. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the person and the situation. There may be times where it works. There may be times where it's not the best thing to do at all.
Right on. Hey, Matt, can I ask you another question real quick?
Sure.
So during your debate with Cy in Tennessee, I'm from North Carolina, and I went to the debate, and I'm the guy who interrupted and called out Cy saying, but you don't believe in atheists. How did you feel about that response?
I don't remember it.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Right on.
Did I remark on it at the time?
No, it got a lot of laughs from the audience. I don't remember your particular response.
At what point was it? I mean, was it like, was it like a heckling call in the midst of our discussion, or was it during questions, or?
No, it was kind of during the discussion. I don't remember exactly which phase of the debate it was in. It was around the middle, I assume. But, you know, the crowd was very charismatic during that debate. I'm sure you remember.
Yeah, generally I'm opposed to like heckling and comments from the crowd during the debate on either side for any reason. But there are times when things start getting out of hand and somebody else might chime in with something. If it really bothered me, I think I probably would have said something. But generally, like I've been to debates where not only did I absolutely have something to say, but I think what I would have to say was better than what was being said on the stage. And I still don't say it. I'd rather talk about it afterwards. But no, I don't recall it. So it evidently didn't faze me much at all.
Right on. Well, I also bumped into you in the bathroom right before the debate, and while we were washing our hands, you told me that you had pre-written your rebuttal, and I was, really looking forward to seeing it. So right on.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Tommy. I'm glad you.
Right. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Jimmy. Have a good day.
See ya. I'm hoping no more hiccups. I changed one of the things that I think might be responsible. There's one other thing that it could be, but as far as changes that have happened in the last week. So I think we're good. It's funny with that topic, though, that first topic, there was at the last general conference for the Mormon church, the president of the church basically went out and said, like, hey, all of you Mormons who are going and like very vitriolically fighting on behalf of the church on Twitter, please stop. And they did we're doing a call for peacemakers. We want peacemakers. And it was very funny to watch how long is the wrong word. It was really how short it took for those people to like repeat that and say like, I'm going to try to be a peacemaker. And then 3 days later, they're like, I've decided to give up on that. He probably wasn't talking about me. So I'm going to go back to saying these people are the scum of the earth and da, da, da. And even that guy we had interacted with in the past, Jacob, who had called in, he would just keep retweeting stuff. And anytime I had engaged in him, I still kept a basic level of politeness. And as he and I had now actually had like an actual conversation, decided to try and be a little bit more personable. And after like a couple months of just nothing but abusive shit back from him, I was finally like, hey man, I'm out. You're like a fucking dick. Like for being a Mormon that's supposed to be the light of the world and stuff, you are just an asshole even when I'm nice to you. And he basically said like the thesis of his response was, you're a piece of shit ex-Mormon atheist. You deserve to be treated like shit. And it's just funny how even when their own people come out and are like, hey guys, stop making us look like shit. They're like, oh, so keep making us look like shit? That sounds great. Anyway, 720-619-2288, 720-619-2288. Web link in the description. Again, we would love to hear from theists, why you believe in God, why you might subscribe to any sort of spirituality. We want to hear the people who are here to share why they believe in God or something godlike.
Yeah, it'd be nice. The thing that I shared out like on Twitter and everything before the show is, did you go to church this morning? I'm genuinely like, if I thought it would get calls, I would almost like to do a Sunday show where somebody calls in and gets like 2 minutes to say, here's what the sermon was about in my church today. And and then we talk about it. I find that stuff interesting, but I get it. I'm a little weird. I want people to defend their beliefs and specifically why they think other people should share their beliefs. It doesn't do me any good to call and say, well, God private really revealed stuff to me, and that's why I'm a believer. Because his private revelation to you doesn't do the rest of us any good. I'd love for somebody to say, here's what they taught in church and why I agree or why I don't agree even would be cool. Instead, we get, let's just hope for the best again. It's another Sunday. We'll see what we get.
And if anybody wants to call in with their middle of the night revelations from God for Matt and how he should be living his life, make sure that you're planning to stick around to actually have those claims scrutinized.
Somebody in the chat for the debate on Friday did the Matt, forgive your father thing just as like a trolling thing. And I don't know if they're just trying to be funny or if they thought that was, it's just strange to listen to people who think they know your mind so well. And as somebody who actually knows what's going on in my life, it's bizarre to watch people get it wrong.
Because now 5 people, I think, have asked, this one's coffee, this one's carbonated water. It's burp juice and poop juice.
And this is simply peach, being in a glass that will almost green screen.
I love peach juice. I do. Millions of peaches for me. Andrew in Ohio, you are on the line with Jimmy and Matt.
Hi. Can you guys hear me all right?
Sure can.
Well, I hear you. Welcome.
All right. So I watched the debate, Matt, that you recently had, modern day debates with the last Christian apologist. I think it was Trey.
Yeah.
And I look forward to watching that channel. I usually like to watch when you or Aron are on, because you guys, I think, take them the most serious. Not just like on the atheist side, just in general. Like, you're just there to debate and get to the truth. The last one with Trey, it seemed like it devolved pretty quickly. Like for a while, you guys were on like illusions being real or not, and you kind of like pointed out to him that he was kind of trying to claim that they were both real and not real. I might be oversimplifying there, but my question was like, you come to these debates really prepared, take it seriously. Do you think it's still productive to continue to like meet new apologists and have these debates? Like recently, it seems like a lot of them don't take it seriously, and when flaws get called out, they don't really address the flaws. They just kind of result to ad hominem or something else.
Yeah, there's a number of things. I don't want to spend thanks for the call and the question, Andrew. I don't want to spend all day today on that debate or how awesome I was or how bad Trey was or any of that stuff. I just posted my debate review of it. And there are things I didn't even include in there. Like later on during the Q&A, when I was basically extending an olive branch, pointing out that there was a question that was ridiculous and pointless to ask Trey, because I wouldn't suspect he got it wrong. He decided he misunderstood me and decided to just attack me while I was sitting there trying to defend. And he did that in some form or another several times. But he walked into the debate, and as I mentioned in the debate review I did, he said he did his 10-minute opening that had nothing to do with the subject. The subject was, is Christianity true? He spent his opening telling you what he wasn't going to do and why he's not an evidentialist and why he's not a presuppositionalist. And then he says, I'm going to present these arguments. And when I do, you might hear some whining or complaining or an attempt to change the subject, but maybe Matt's the savior of atheism. When you walk into a debate and the opponent in their opening remarks makes it about you, and attempts to poison the well and attempts to suggest what you're going to do. He cared more about getting out his message that myself and other atheists are irrational than he did in defending what he was there to defend, which is Christianity true? That is embarrassing. And I'll read you pretty much word for word what I sent to James Coons, who's the head guy over there at Modern Day Debates, after the debate was over. This was at 9:38 p.m. I said, not trying to start anything, we can talk about it later, but the next time I show up for a debate and the opponent doesn't address the topic in their opening at all, I'll just leave. He did 10 minutes on why he's not an evidentialist or a presuppositionalist, and about 30 seconds on part of his first argument. That was the entire message that I sent to James. What I included in my debate review is, this has happened more than once. There was somebody else, I think his name was Samuel, who was supposed to defend Pascal's wager and didn't really talk about Pascal's wager until the last 30 seconds of his opening remarks. I get it. Not everybody's been debating for 20 years. But my current position is, what I will commit to is I will commit to showing up and being prepared for the debate, and I will present an opening remark that discusses the debate. And if my opponent shows up and does not discuss the topic of the debate, or only mentions it for the last 30 seconds of their opening, as Trey did, I will read my opening statement and say that since nothing my opponent said in their opening is relevant to the topic, I have nothing to rebut, and my work here is done, and then I will leave, because it's not worth wasting people's time. There were some good points of discussion later on that happened because of specific questions people asked. There were plenty of opportunities to expose him on things, and I could sit there for 2 hours and ask questions and try to expose, but that's not what the debate's supposed to be. When the debate turns into, why is Trey confused and irrational? Okay, what good does that do? The other apologists are just going to be, yeah, you keep debating these, garbage YouTubers who don't have any understanding of the subject, or who don't know how a debate's supposed to work, or who don't know that in a collegiate scored debate, if you start presenting new arguments and new information after the opening, you're going to lose points or be disqualified or whatever the rules are for it. All I wanted to do was have a discussion on, is Christianity true? And all he wanted to do was try to force me to concede that there must be a non-contingent being. And when he couldn't get that, he wouldn't accept an I don't know, wouldn't accept that I wasn't convinced that was true, because he had a script. And in much the same way that he's like, you can't have God's word without God, and so that's why I'm going to start with God. When he absolutely failed to make a compelling case for even a non-contingent being, let alone a God, let alone Jesus, he was stuck, and he knew it. And then all he did was accuse me of changing the subject when I'm the only one that talked about why is Christianity true. Anyway, I don't want to redo my whole debate review because it's putting people to sleep.
This is why I think online, I always get attacked, and I was getting attacked a ton on Twitter, hundreds a day there toward the end, on how much of a joke I think online debate generally is. And I'm a person who runs a debate channel, a type of debate channel, and we're about to launch more debates and stuff. But none of you were mentioning the collegiate experience. Nobody who's quote unquote training to become a better debater bothers to reference what makes a good debate. All they have seen are these clips of people, and I've even said this of atheists and people who, it's part of my whole, when you first become an atheist, try shutting the fuck up for 4 years and just listen and find out stuff, because there are so many people who, the new atheists, who, a brand new atheist who have watched Matt clips or have watched Hitchens clips or have watched basically debaters who then decide like, I got such a dopamine rush off of watching that person get shut down. I'm going to get an even better dopamine rush if I go shut people down like this. And then they end up jumping in Facebook groups and stuff and doing what they think is a cosplay of those scenarios and just make everybody look like a giant fucking asshole, or they make bad arguments. but while representing themselves as somehow a representative of skepticism. So the person who said they couldn't find my Twitter, that's because I deleted my Twitter. And I'm proud of it. And it's never coming back. Well, maybe under new ownership it would. Anyway, I guess it'll never come back as a Twitter account either. Now it'll be an X account, but X is my X. So yeah, the whole thing, the whole online amateur debate has ruined debate for me. Even as I sit here and go, I don't know what type of debater label I would give myself. And I have been reluctant to join the formal debate stuff, and will only probably start doing it soon in these shows that we have coming up that account for the disadvantages to online debate and try to balance that out. Amateur online debate. Anyway, it's all that shit. Andrew, thanks for calling. Anything else before we let you
go? No, that's all. I appreciate the comments from both you guys. Good to hear that. I was going to say about sending James the email. That was a good idea. Take care, guys.
All right. See you later.
Bye.
There is also one we'll notice, and I'm not even necessarily saying this specifically about the channel that we were discussing, because this is certainly true of debate channels in general, and even these things that try to dress up as we're the reasonable middle ground. In fact, for all the shit I talk about modern day debates is still only 20% as garbage as Jubilee. I fucking hate Jubilee.
What the hell that is?
It's this, you've definitely seen clips or pieces of it. What they do is they take two sides of an argument and then they have them stand across from each other in the room, and then they'll do things like, raise your hand if you think blah, blah, blah. And then they'll try and sit them down and have them have a reasonable conversation. But the types of things they platform are, here's a physicist versus a flat earther. It'll be a group of those two things. And it creates this idea of like, let's find the middle ground. And you end up getting these flat earthers speaking very confidently, like the giant assholes they are, and looking like they have some sort of intellectual. It definitely causes, it is elevating, it is bringing the lowest scum arguments of the earth up to the level of science and making it look like, but there's reasonable ways to have these conversations. And, you know, isn't it all a matter of belief and freedom to believe what you blah, blah, blah. It's all fucking garbage.
Yeah. If I've seen clips from it, I certainly have never seen clips where it's like, raise your hand if this, and let's sit down and, yeah, I don't know what the hell that is.
Yeah. They've done it with trans people and transphobic people. And then they've also done, one of the famous ones was like, you put 7
I don't tend to watch debates.
It's not a debate. It's more around, it's more conversation sort of things. But they also do videos that'll be called like Find the Secret Atheist, or shit like that.
I might have seen something like that.
Yeah.
Where there, but that to me was more like an attempt at a reality game show where they've got like 10 people and you're supposed to suss out who's the non-believer. I watched one of those and was just pissed.
It's that vibe. Yeah. And their conversations, again, just the total equality where they'll bring in actual doctors and actual scientists versus anti-vaxxers, that kind of thing. It is platforming the kind of shit that I think is horrifically harmful. And why I don't think that, go ahead, sir.
I think people might be mildly surprised by the stuff that I actually bother watching. I mean, I watch a lot of, like, I don't have cable, but I watch YouTube and things all the time. And so like I love watching Humanist Report and a number of other news related things like that. And then the rest of the content is reptile based content, MCU based content. Like I'll watch New Rock Stars and Screen Crush. Basically everything Ryan Airy and Eric Voss say just enters my brain. One of my favorite channels, someone named Awkward Ashley is a millennial who watches movies, and I feel like I get to rewatch the movie and experience it through somebody new, and she's awesome. When I'm not studying for debates and things like that, I'm watching stuff that other people would consider garbage and just absolutely loving it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as we do our stuff going forward, and this is a reminder, if you'd like, you can go to QNAline.com, QNAline.com. Right now there's a tab up there if you want to apply for NBOSS, which is Matt's foremost debate show that we're launching. And then we'll also be launching Duologues in hopefully both in August. I want to do a lot of debates in August, but we will be accounting for, the idea isn't that it's wrong to ever debate a flat earther. It's wrong to equally platform a flat earther with, for example, like I said, a physicist, a scientist, or whatever. However, there are ways in which there are versions of those things. So duologues is more about duologues. The concept of duologues is, imagine the show right now. Matt and I are sitting next to each other, but replace one of us with an opponent, and then people call in. And then each person gets some amount of time to respond to the question. And so it might be a question for me, or it might be a question for the opponent, and then the other one switches. And the idea is, this is not a debate show as much on the merits of who is correct. This is a debate show about the consequences of the belief. So what are the consequences faced with the same question of being a Mormon versus an ex-Mormon, or a Christian versus an atheist, or a consequence-based. What are the now, obviously, a lot of the questions are going to come in and they're going to be about the reality of the belief. And so you'll get to see the consequence of what type of argument will you let represent you when you are a Mormon versus an ex-Mormon? What type of evidence, what type of gullibility maybe even will you fall for on one versus the other? And I think that that's going to be great. And then Matt's debate show is almost an interrogation style debate show. I feel like if this is as good as you say it is, it will stand up to skepticism, or you will look like an idiot. Though he hasn't written that type of marketing.
Kind of a run the gauntlet.
Yeah. So it should be good. It should be good. Should be fun stuff.
Wow, what happened? A minute ago we had 5 calls. Now we're down to 2 again.
Did we?
Bummer.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. We'll get back into calls.
Let's take the calls. Let's get back to calls.
That's my fault. But we do want Theists. Theists, call in. If you believe in God, you have any sort of spiritual belief, anything, we want to know, because if you have the truth and we don't, we want to adopt it. And if you don't have the truth, we want to help you see your way through it if you're receptive to that. But in the meantime,
I have an idea.
Go ahead.
So, what if we gave Theists the option of silencing one of the two of us, so that instead of being in a 2-on-1 situation against both Matt and Jimmy where they don't think they're going to get to talk as much, what if we said, you can call in and decide to only talk to Jimmy or only talk to Matt? That way it's not unfair.
I'm fine with that. I feel like if we say it's that way, it's not unfair. Now it's going to become an expectation for all future shows. But for today,
True.
if you want to pick your, I don't even want to use the word opponent, but the person who will explore your belief, we'll give you that option.
Yeah. Well, what the hell? We do stuff for fun sometimes. And I'm encouraged by all the other people out there who like Awkward Ashley. That's cool.
Yeah. Matt in California, you are on the line with Jimmy and Matt. Other Matt.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, just want to preface this with I've been watching for quite some time, probably actually since you started the line, Jimmy. Big fan.
Love to hear it. Thank you.
You guys have been pretty much integral in getting me out of a lot of things that I don't really like, that I used to believe in. But you guys hear that all the time, so I'll just skip that and head to what I actually was here to talk about. So I'm a skeptic, but and most of my friends are also atheists, but a lot of them hold like sort of questionable beliefs, things about aliens and ghosts, and some people even some more harmful things that I don't really want to get into. But basically, I've sort of run to my end on getting the people that are more into those sorts of things to sort of see where that might not be the most true, if that makes sense. Like I've tried using street epistemology and stuff like that, but what I'm wondering is if like maybe you guys could sort of give me a little bit better advice as to dealing with those sort of things.
Maybe, maybe not. One of the things is the skeptic community itself, while it's a great community for skeptics, I mean, I don't know that it's doing much to create more skeptics and to kind of further encourage skepticism. It's kind of more of something people fall into, and you kind of, and I'm not knocking anybody over this, by the way, before my skeptic friends start, lambasting me over this. I really feel like, in much the same way that somebody has to care about the truth, they have to care about the methods for finding the truth. And in some cases, people will get there because they find something that they believed in that turns out to be harmful. A psychic scammed them, or someone close to them, or they watched someone in their family, grieve for much longer, or have that grief exploited by somebody, or give money to an organization that ultimately, wound up harming them, or they decided, not to vaccinate their kids, and that resulted in something. It almost needs to be, I think, some sort of personal awakening. And so the conversations that you're having with your friends, I think are good. I suspect what you're feeling is the same frustration that I do, in that for me, the value of skepticism was like almost instantly obvious. I'm not saying I was instantly an expert. I'm just saying that, oh yes, we need a method by which to verify that our beliefs are justified. And I care about truth. And so I want to make sure that I don't have, hey, if God is real, I need a way to tell that. It's like one of the moments I remember from the debate the other day, and I'm not bringing it up again for that, it's just fresh on my mind, was somebody asked how he would go about verifying that an empty tomb belonged to Jesus. And would that be any different than, an empty tomb belonging to somebody else, to Robin Hood? And he talked about all kinds of things that had nothing at all to do with how you would verify that a tomb belonged to somebody else. The only thing that matters then is the data that you can collect to show the connection between those. And I think most people don't have time. Most people are going to be just fine getting by day to day by relying on other people's work, whether those other people are the ones who wrote a science book or wrote an article in the New York Times or whatever magazine that they're getting from. And so the best advice that I think I can give you, Matt, is just keep doing it. And, and it's very difficult to not do an I told you so, but
for sure. Yeah.
You can possibly find some common ground, find something that they think is just bullshit. Whether, if they're a flat earther who thinks astrology is bullshit, or an astrologer who thinks that flat earth is bullshit, use the comparison between the two of why you don't accept either of them. Yeah, that's about as good as I can do, probably.
That's pretty solid advice, I think. Yeah, and that sort of thing is really good for people that are willing to hear it. Like you were saying, I think they have to care about the truth. And there are some people that hold like really, really harmful beliefs. And I'm having a moral struggle just keeping them in my life, if that makes sense. Like I don't really like to cut people off. It doesn't make me feel good, but it's getting to a point where I feel like I've done everything that I can do, and every time I display their cognitive dissonance to them, they just find another way to dig themselves another hole. I don't know. maybe
I get,
I don't know.
I get that.
I appreciate your guys' help though.
Yeah, I get that, Matt. I don't have any desire or goal to cut anybody out of my life, but I'm willing to. And
Right.
it usually ties to, like if a friend of mine believed the earth was flat, well, I'm probably not going to have those conversations with them after a point, after they've demonstrated that conversations, at least with me about that, are relatively futile. But I try to look at what the likely harm is from that belief, and certainly the process that you use to get to believe the earth is flat. That heuristic can make you believe lots of other things that are more harmful. But I have absolutely no room in my life for bigots, and I don't even go down a 3-strike route. It's like, you've said something awful. I'm going to explain why this is. I'm happy to have a conversation with somebody. And forever, if they come to me, even after I'm done talking to them otherwise, and say, I have a question about this, can you answer it? I'll probably will. Because I'm not, that's them saying, I'm curious as to whether or not I'm right or why you object to this. I will probably have those conversations. But when it comes down to hanging out with them, that's just not going to happen. I don't see the value in, I don't need to invite the KKK onto the show to ask them their views on civil rights. I already know what they are, and I can fairly represent them while demolishing that. And even if I couldn't, I certainly don't have to invite a racist person into my home or a transphobic person into my home. And that doesn't make me the one with a problem. I just watched, there's a great episode of the Humanist Report from like 3 weeks ago where he talks about what Cenk and Anna Kasparian are doing. Cenk Uygur or Iger, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, my apologies. What they're doing in their new kind of let's lecture trans people on strategy. That it's hilarious because Anna then turns around and throws a fit about how she's done with the Democratic Party because she's not getting what she wants out of it, and just sounds unhinged right after she tells trans people, hey, the way you should protest is sit there quietly with a sign, don't do anything that's too disruptive. You got to learn to compromise. You can't try to defend these parts.
Funny how they have that in common with the famous famous in atheist circles, maybe the famous transphobe who tried to call and lecture Arden on the same stuff this week. It's funny how they're not transphobes when they're doing it, and yet it's such a fond pastime of transphobes to tell people who are having their rights undermined that they should be more polite as the person is advocating to their face for a lessening of their humanity.
You don't know anybody an explanation for who you are, and you don't know anybody time in your life on a personal level that makes your life more miserable.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you genuinely care about people and you're okay with them being wrong, and perhaps in the hopes of engaging with them further, or maybe seeing them turn around and see the light on some issue, or being available to them when they've got a question for you to ask down the line, that's not only, your prerogative, but I'd say that's a good thing. There are only a couple of people that I've completely cut out of my life that I won't speak to again, and it's normally for personal affronts.
Matt, to the question that, as you gave it to the screener about making skepticism more approachable to friends who aren't into philosophy, I've been using the comparison recently to how much we hated in math classes when we had to show our work, even if we could do the answers in our head, if we could come up with the answers in our head. And now, as I'm older, recognizing that they didn't actually care as much about if you could get the right answer. They cared that you demonstrated you understood how the equations and the theory and everything works. So basically, my answer to yours is show your work. Not everything has to be during an argument. Not everything has to be during some sort of confrontation. But as you talk about things, sharing the foundations of how you've come to your conclusion. Not only is it useful in spreading skepticism, I have found that a lot of people are actually very excited and interested to listen to people and the way that they come to those conclusions. So that's probably what I would do there.
Yeah, I actually haven't ever thought about it in that way before. That's a pretty unique way of coming at it. But that's why I called in. You guys are the experts when it comes to this stuff.
Well, we can fake it with the best of them.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I've never seen anybody with no formal sort of degree in philosophy take on actual theologians and stuff as well as you do, Matt. It is quite impressive, the balls that you have to get up on those stages and get up there and say those things. But
thank you.
I appreciate your guys' time today. Honestly, I think we had a constructive conversation. I think I'll be able to apply some of this stuff.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks, Matt.
See you, Matt.
Thanks.
We do have a theist waiting. However, I've been looking at caller number 4 this whole time, thinking I want to hit that one. So I'm going to pull that one real quick. We'll do that one fast and then get on to some theistic callers here. So Levi,
I'm going to let you hit this too, because I literally had this question during an interview for a sociological study that I did the other day, which is kind of cool.
Cool. Levi in Colorado, my old stomping grounds. You are on with Jimmy and Matt. You are on the line with Jimmy and Matt. What's on your mind?
Hi. By the way, how are you guys doing?
Just fine. How are you?
Not bad.
Well, I'm doing okay. But I was just wondering, I know, Jimmy, you've kind of discussed this before on your channel multiple times, but I'm just wondering, how come it seems like atheism has become associated with white men, women and everybody else seems to be cut out of the picture, and it seems like it almost repels. I feel like it almost repels other people of different sexualities and ethnicities and whatnot, just because it seems to be dominated by white men and hardly anything else. And it seems like women are generally more interested in keeping religion or keeping the faith more than men, at least in my experience. I just wondered what you guys' thoughts are on that.
Yeah. So first of all, there's multiple questions at play, and you should know it is more that atheist representation is most popular amongst white men. It doesn't necessarily speak to the bulk of the population of atheists. That said, one can say that actually statistically, because of that representation, it is also demographically more popular amongst white men. And basically, the way I would ask the question back to you that I think answers it would be something along the lines of, hey, Levi, why do you think that the category of people with the most privilege and freedom of identity are more likely to have a controversial in society identity? And it is a result of, as far as just the consideration of atheism in our lifetimes, most people watching, has gone from something that is the worst thing you could be is an atheist, to something much more acceptable, to the point that sometimes there are some days that being an atheist feels downright boring and it's almost disappointing. That's mostly a joke. And so we are in a situation where it's still a controversial identity. It is still one that is very much family reinforced. And so for certain demographics of people, the familial element is going to be a more or less powerful thing. I wouldn't spend too much time trying to go down a route of are women less likely to become because this fact about womanhood or whatever, because there is a growing number of secular women. But also even just the term atheist, I so don't give a fuck about who is and isn't atheist anymore, because as we watch that number grow, other religions that can be considered atheist religions or religious type of things are also growing. So you see things like there are plenty of atheists who are into astrology. but don't necessarily believe in a God. And so as far as why it is the most popular amongst white men, it was because white men were the first people who could get away with being atheists. We see the other groups growing. We definitely see people leaving traditional religion for a lot of the reasons that we were saying before, but we're still in a world where, as a society, these identities can be more controversial, and it is harder to turn on your family, especially if you are parts of certain groups than others. This is also why I like whenever we have people like Mandisa Thomas on to talk about how atheism is extremely unpopular in the black community still. It's generally going to be for the same reasons. Right now, we are still emerging as a group that is growing, that only until recently you really weren't going to get away with it and not have as significant of social consequences if you weren't a white man.
So you're not really interested in shutting down all belief in God. You're more interested in trying to get people to be more skeptical. Am I correct?
I think it has the exact same result. In fact, I'm not at all interested in just shutting down belief in God, because a belief in God could technically be correct. I'm interested in finding the system which, if God does exist, would actually reveal he exists and give you a reason to believe it in him, for him, her, then whatever pronoun that God would have, for good reasons, with the knowledge that if that God doesn't exist, that exact same system would prevent you from saying that he does, again, or whatever other pronoun.
Yeah.
So skepticism is beautiful, because if God exists, there's no reason a skeptical person shouldn't be able to find that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been reading an articles that have been going over the research between women and men in terms of atheism, and it seems like statistically women are more likely to be religious, probably because women are more social and they're more likely to go along with the community. And
worldwide, they also have less access to basic education and higher education, both of which result in more atheism. Yeah, worldwide. In the U.S., it's closer to, as far as educational access goes, it's closer to equal. In fact, I think that right now, women may actually be the larger demographic in colleges and stuff. But across the world, you have highly religious places that don't let girls go to school at all. And so, yeah, you're definitely, I've met now hundreds of ex-Muslim atheist men, and I've maybe met a dozen ex-Muslim atheist women. And out of the Muslim world, access to education in those places that are Muslim states for women is significantly diminished. And I don't think that that's unrelated.
Yeah. So also, I kind of remember you talking about a story between you and your dad having disagreements on like certain events that your mom thought was a divine intervention or something like that, and your dad was a bit more skeptical, even though they were both Mormon. So like I just wonder like how is it just like I don't know. I think it seems like in my life too.
I just to give you the quick explanation of what you're saying in the relation. My father, as a white man in society, has reinforcements that shows that he would be valued for showing that he has both a creative and skeptical mind, that that he can intellectually perform. I'm not calling him the most intellectual guy, but he is the guy who taught me skepticism. My mother grew up with, here is the identity for you, and how much you adhere to that identity will be the determining factor of your assessed value. And it has nothing to do with how smart you can be. It has everything to do with, how clean is your house? How well-behaved do your children appear to be in public? Not how well-behaved are they actually. None of the things that are actually influential on identity forming that give you the freedom to have that sort of thoughtfulness.
I grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and they have a I don't know if you know this, but their prophet is Ellen G. White, which is a woman. And I think as a result of that, all the women, at least in my experience, are much more Bible thumping than the men, give or take, with a few exceptions. But like when it came to the family, whenever we'd watch a movie and it's like, oh no, it's satanic, my mom would be the first one to like shut it off. And it's like, no, we've none of that. I'm setting down the law. This is not good. This is not holy. This is evil. Yada yada yada.
You'll find a diversity of that across religions, though, because while the Seventh-day Adventists seem to have gone the other direction with it, the Community of Christ, when they started allowing women into their priesthood, you saw that church become a lot less fundamentalist, and you saw that, which they're an off branch of Mormonism, not Mormonism itself. They became more progressive. They became more accepting of even if people who are participating don't believe the truth claims literally. So it does sort of depend to where you, but then there's all of the implications that are reinforced from the rest of society as far as what is expected of you if you are a man in leadership versus if you are a woman in leadership.
Yeah. I also feel it makes me really sad whenever I see these statistics, like how women are more religious because they're more oppressed by religion than men are, and yet they're the ones that fall for it harder. And I don't know,
Levi,
it almost makes.
Can you name a group of people who are more oppressed than white men that aren't more religious? By religion, and that are oppressed by religion. This is what we talk about when we talk to people, like people from Black non-believers, like people from the Middle East, like people who. Groups that are traditionally oppressed the most by religious also have the highest occurrence of religion. It's a fucked up thing that ends up happening.
Yeah. Matt, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts on why atheism isn't more popular with women?
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with Jimmy. I just was asked this during a collegiate study the other day. I think there's a lot of factors. And I think one of the things, in much the same way that, like, there are sports that I like, very few, but there are. And some of the ones that I like, there's no obvious reason why men should dominate those sports. Pool, billiards, I mean, there might be a slight height reach advantage, but across the board, some of the best women can play right alongside the men. But even if you went to something like chess, there's no reason that a man should be better at chess than a woman. And I suspect that the biggest reason that's currently the case is because we don't create a world in which women and girls are encouraged to learn and play the game and be applauded and encouraged. And so you basically, for women, you're pulling from a sample pool of 1% of the population, and for men, you're pulling from a sample pool of 20% of the population. And so, of course, the talent depth is going to be deeper when you've got a deeper pool you're pulling from. I think that is one factor. It may be the case that there's something fundamentally different, but it may tie into 20 other things of how we're teaching them. Right now, like, we have a society where, as Jimmy was pointing out, it is safe for me and for Jimmy to come out and be like, hey, we're atheists. Christianity, that's bullshit. Islam, that's bullshit. Muhammad was a pederast who raped a 9-year-old, and he encourages other people to make excuses for that. The Catholic Church is a criminal organization that is shuffling pederast priests around. It's embarrassing to wake up every single day and see all of these things going on and realize that I'm still in a minority. Not everyone is in a position where they are socially, financially, or otherwise empowered to the point where they could be comfortable saying that. And it also depends on geography. I can say that here in the United States because of free speech, and I can do it here in Austin. But if I lived in Lubbock, I might have to have security in order to say things like that. And so I think that the factors are just really numerous. But one of the things is women have also been, and I think Jimmy touched on this too, largely as a product of culture, sit down and shut up. It's not yours to talk. It's not yours to be vocal. You don't get to be in charge. And when you're talking about people who are willing to speak out against injustice and on behalf of an issue that's not particularly popular, the people who have been encouraged and empowered to speak up are the ones that are more likely to do it. And by and large, that tends to be men.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in conclusion, I had a whole thing to say and I totally forgot it. Crap.
I'm going to be honest. When you called
10
in,
times a call.
I was hoping you were going to be an asshole. I was hoping it was going to be can we address that women are more emotional? And I thought we were going to get into some anti-SJW atheist culture war shit, but this was fine.
I just, like I said, it's just very disheartening that the ones who are more oppressed are the ones that fall for the system the most sometimes. And it also becomes really annoying when you're in conversation with people beyond atheism, like just talk about progressivism. If you're trying to convince a black person that they're oppressed yet they're conservative, and most black people are conservative because the reasons that we mentioned, it's gonna be harder because I'm poor and I'm oppressed yet I'm conservative, see, therefore I'm right. I don't know, that becomes annoying whenever discussing things like that because people just use women and other people, minorities, as an example. See, conservative Christian values are true because most of the people that claim to be oppressed are actually on our side. So that's it. Okay.
I think you will find many activists from those group who share that frustration. Levi, we're going to jump on to a marathon of theists here. And you want to give a final goodbye there?
Just thanks for having me on, and it's always nice to talk with like-minded people when you live in an area where there's hardly anybody that are very like-minded. So I'm glad for your conversation.
Cool. Thanks, Levi.
Yep. You have a good one.
You too. All right, let's get into those theist calls. We do have room for more theist calls. There's a couple other atheists in the queue, but as far as the remainder of the show goes, new calls, we have room for more theists on top of the theists who are already here. But we will start our little, like I said, theistic marathon with Landon in Oklahoma, who has a question for Matt. So I think that means I will mute up.
Hello?
Hey, Landon.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
I am slightly terrified and excited to ask you this question.
Well, I don't know what there is to be terrified of, but ask your question, Bridge Keeper. I'm not afraid.
It's a social anxiety thing. But the question that I wanted to ask is kind of long-winded, but I've been watching quite a bit of your content as of late, and it's really helped me deal with and properly parse a lot of really, really bad belief systems that I have dealt with in my exposure to things like fundamentalism, cults, experiencing these other people. And so, as contrarian as this may be to ask as a potential theist, I want to ask you, how would I best be able to challenge people who are more deep-seated in what I would view as fallacious or incorrect beliefs? How do you go about bringing somebody into a position where you can challenge that without it being seen as something like an attack on their person?
Okay, I'm a little confused. That's not quite the question I thought you were asking. So one more time for clarity, just the question at the end, just so that I know, because what it says here in the call screen thing is that you wanted to know how, from a theistic perspective, I can encourage people to explore and challenge their beliefs to ensure their beliefs are rooted in logic. And the question you asked seems to be different. So whatever question it is you want, ask it one more time.
The question in the screening is correct. I'm just stumbling over my words here. I apologize.
Okay. It's fine either way, because I think those are two very different questions. The one thing is, if you want to say beginning from a theistic perspective, how would I encourage someone to ensure that their beliefs are rooted in logic? And the answer is you can't. Theism is the position of being convinced that some God exists. And so that position does not entail that one should value truth or logic. If we begin with even, I'm sorry, my meds are making me burp, which I'll try to do quietly. If we begin with a specific version of theism, like a biblical theism, then you've already accepted some foundation that could encourage logical evaluation. But if that logical evaluation ultimately defeats that specific version of theism, then the foundation you have for valuing logic goes away. So the whole thing ends up collapsing. Only someone whose foundation begins with, I care about truth and reason, can then warrant that. And if it turns out that there's a theism that is consistent with this desire for truth and reason, cool, then it will survive that test. But truth/reason/logic must be the foundation. And then anything else, if you put anything else first, it can potentially erode that. So not a specific version of theism, nor theism in general carries with it any sort of requirement to care about truth or logic. I wish it did, but all then it would,
no, I'm in
all it
the
would be at that
exact same boat.
Yeah, all it would be at that point is, here's why I care about truth and logic. If somebody said, I care about truth and logic because logic is the most consistently reliable method of evaluating claims to determine truth, that would be cool. But when they say, I value truth and logic because God says so, or because the Bible says so,
And it goes right out the window.
Yeah. And if truth and logic demonstrate or fail to affirm the position that they're using as the foundation, then it all collapses. I mean, I wish it were otherwise. It'd be great if there was a way to begin with theism, the de facto, I am convinced some God exists, and then say, because of that, I now care about logical reasoning and, constructing valid and sound syllogisms. That would be wonderful, except that anything that would justify that also is irrelevant, because the fact that logical reasoning leads us reliably, or as reliably as we can, to a true understanding of reality is its own reason. It's like saying, I love you because God told me to love you. Would you rather have someone love you or say they love you because God told them to, or because they just love you?
No, you hit it right on the head with that, because one of the things I've experienced witnessing, just interacting with these different groups, being part of collegiate ministries and whatnot, is people who will say exactly that. They'll say, hey, God told me to love you. And so that is the absolute depth of their expression. And you can tell anybody observing from the outside is like, that's not love. You are being entirely facetious, and it is entirely disingenuous. Meanwhile, I'm over here trying to kind of better understand these things and realize, hey, I love you because you have innate human value and you're somebody that I respect, or perhaps we share some common goal or interest, or perhaps I'm related to you and value you. And what I find frustrating is this dichotomy, and exactly that kind of tragedy that you talk about, which is that outside of assuming some kind of belief system to be true, these kinds of assumptions or declarations mean nothing. They don't have any value.
Landon, I have a few questions for you, if you don't mind.
Sure, shoot. I am more than happy to answer questions.
So on my end, it says you're a theist, so you do still hold some theistic faith-based belief, right?
That I do.
Okay. So, and I may just be in danger of basically making the same point by asking you some questions, but here when it talks about you wanting to challenge other people's belief and enable that their beliefs are rooted in logic. and you're calling in to ask Matt, you didn't technically say you wanted to ask me, but if you were asking either of us, you know that the thing we're going to advocate for is utilization and promotion of skepticism, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I wouldn't have called in otherwise. That would have been rather foolish.
But your theistic belief, your faith-based belief, do you have a reason that justifies it, which is acceptable, which would be appealing to a skeptic, that meets a burden of proof that would be satisfactory for a skeptic?
I don't know, to be entirely honest with you.
And this is the point I was going to get to. I thought it would be a question or two later. Then don't you need to find that out before you can tell other people to utilize skepticism on their belief? If you aren't sure whether or not your belief can be satisfactorily justified post-skeptical inquiry, then how can you expect anybody else to do what for their belief what you haven't done for yours?
So I'm really glad that you asked that question, because if I can be super honest and upfront with you, as somebody who is very much avoidant of things like conflict, I'm very fearful as a natural just kind of condition. The question I asked was about me. It's about challenging my own beliefs, about evaluating my own conditions.
So why don't we just do that?
I worded it.
Landon, why don't we just tell us what your belief is? Tell Matt and I what specific faith claim you have or what specific theistic belief you have. We'll ask you some questions about it. And at the very minimum, we'll tell you whether as skeptics you've met our standard.
Sure, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Let's do it.
Now, my primary... I grew up in kind of a fundamentalist Christian sort of faith, and I still hold to the Abrahamic God as described in the Bible, but not in the way that he's described. That's how I would put it.
Would it be fair to say that... I'm sorry, because I grew up similar. No, I grew up similar, and I just wonder, would it be fair to say that you were indoctrinated into a fairly standard Protestant version of Christianity, but over time have come to develop your own version of that by eliminating the things that you reject and that don't make sense and that you find immoral or problematic or wrong, and still keeping the things that you haven't kind of removed yet?
No, that would be spot on. It's almost like a surgical kind of dissection of your own faith.
Yeah. Okay. I'm right there with you. I did the same thing.
So now that back onto the topic of it surviving skeptical scrutiny, what good reasons would you say? Because the foundation that you just described, obviously no skeptic is going to say, starting with the belief that you were indoctrinated into and then morphing it to be more palatable is a reasonable method to get to a truth, right? That's not going to be something we would say.
I would agree.
So what is the method? What is the reason that you are hoping would suffice for a skeptic to say, okay, yeah, that's a reasonable belief to hold?
Well, I don't want to pull from any biblical claim. I throw that out. I've already had conversations with literalists and fundamentalists that trying to claim that an extant book that we can demonstrate there are flaws in is flawless.
We don't need to focus any time on the arguments you're not going to make. Yeah. Let's just focus on the arguments you will.
Okay, sure. Sorry. My primary argumentation, as weak as it may be, is simply observing complexity and looking at that and going, and granted, I know that this is somewhat fallacious, but looking at that complexity and realizing that either via these complex processes over time or through spontaneous creation, whichever you want to adhere to, it seems, at least to me, somewhat likely that something outside of naturalistic processes could have had a hand in it.
So rather than me tell you why I reject that, we're exploring your ability to be skeptical with it, right? You're talking to two skeptics. So, you can pick either one of us if you want to cosplay as one of us, Or you can
Sure.
just try to say, I think a skeptic would say. So you've just said that out loud. What do you think a skeptic would respond to what you just said? What are the words you think a skeptic would say in response?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because as soon as I was saying it, I immediately understood what the articulation was, which is that there isn't a need for that kind of externality. There isn't even a need for that thing to be personified with human characteristics. You know, that would be like saying something along the lines of naturalistic evolution must have some kind of external process to take place. But I can't demonstrate to you that external process is taking place. You only have what you can observe, test, and evaluate.
So as a person who's wanting to be a skeptic, who's wanting to believe for good reasons, how should that influence the belief that at the beginning of this call you held?
Well, honestly, it probably just needs to get tossed.
I don't think it necessarily has to go into the no bin. I don't know what you're implying with it. Because there's still more exploration to go. There's still more questions to ask.
Sure,
but it's fine to go, at the beginning of this call, I believed that the complexity of life demonstrates that there must be something. And through this call, and we haven't told you a reason why anything's bad yet. All you did was ask, and maybe it helped to go out loud, and then you answered out loud. It's fine to do that and go, I now realize my position should be, I don't know if that's true. I now realize I should go look more. I should go read more. I should go explore more.
No, you're 100%.
Anybody who...
I have a follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Matt.
No, I just have a follow-up when we get to that spot. So after having talked about this, I realized when I was in a similar point, not remotely saying, Landon, that we went down the same path or anything else. I'm just saying, I've been where you were and I got better. That's not it. There are similarities. and so after I got rid of the things that were, so there's three categories, which I mentioned in the debate that I did the other night. Claims that are evidently true, claims that are not evidently true, and claims that are evidently not true. And so the third one, that means these are claims that we would normally just call false. Once I got rid of the claims that were false, evidently not true, and I had to sideline the claims within Christianity that were not evidently true, not supported by evidence, and set those aside as saying, I can't believe these until they are supported by evidence. All that left were the claims that were evidently true. And for me, the only things that I could find within there that were evidently true were absolutely mundane things, like the names of places and people. Yeah, stuff like that. And it seems to me that if the big issue of there being a God at all, or that we have any sort of word from a God or anything that ties to the Bible or Christianity, if none of the substantive things tied to Christianity or Islam or Scientology, if none of those things are evidently true, then I can't identify with them. I can't accept them. I might find myself wanting to cling to them. And at that point, what I found was more along the lines of saying, I hope this is true, or I wish this is true, or I want this to be true. And I just reached a point where, first of all, I actually don't hope that it's true. I'm with Hitchens in the notion that a God sitting up there watching and judging people based on who they love and who they're attracted to, or allowing a child to be assaulted and molested, or allowing someone to starve and hunger, or creating a worm that burrows into your eye, and that's the only way the worm can live, is to burrow into your eye and leave its the notion that in order for things to live, other things have to die. All of these things get together, and I'm like, oh, I can believe that these were the best guesses of Bronze and Iron Age people trying to figure out the world we live in, and that now we know more, and that we're just kind of hanging on to these things as sort of lingering beliefs. So the question, the follow-up question is there anything that ties to whatever portion of theistic belief you have that you would acknowledge is not evidently true, but that you still like wish it were evidently true? Or is it just like is it more of it's still clinging onto you in an abstract sense, or are you really trying to cling on to it to find it?
Now that I'm actually processing this for the first time, I would have to say it would be the concept of eternality. The idea that life can possess meaning beyond the present day. And there's a number of reasons for this. I had a very unfortunate upbringing. I came from a separated home. I'm currently living with a chronic illness at the age of 23 that significantly impedes my ability to do much of anything outside of work and sleep. My life does not hold a lot of intrinsic value right now. And it is comforting, put it blatantly, as shamefully as it is to admit that, to believe that the suffering that I am enduring has some kind of additional meaning. Because if it doesn't, and I would presume that you would ascribe that it doesn't, well, shit, my life fucking sucks.
Landon, the thing is the thing you just described, I could have given as my own bio, and then I could have said, my life has no intrinsic value. And I get a lot of comfort out of the fact that neither does anybody else's. And therefore, my value is what I make it. But I don't go out, Landon. I deal with significant chronic illness. I'm trying to get more of a social life now. The last few months, it's been impossible because it got so bad.
Yeah.
But my life right now is work and sleep. That's really it. A friend and I recently started playing a pirate game together. That's been nice. But an online friend. You don't know her. She goes to a different school. She lives in Canada. Anyway, so it's as far as concepts of perspective go, even when you have, there's a concept in this book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which isn't a perfect book. I know there are people who see it as a bit of a self-help shitty thing, but there's a part in there that's sort of emphasizes that while things might not be your fault, everything is your responsibility, your value, your meaning out of life, everything that, how you are going to go forward. It's impossible to transfer responsibility to other people. And so that might be an interesting book for somebody like you, in the situation you're in. It was for me. And I usually read it after breakups. It's a really good book after a breakup, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. But I mean, literally what you were describing as it was only 3 statements, but I was like, yo, cool. We're twins. And I have a totally different experience with what I would say I am now, which is a bit of a universal nihilist. I acknowledge that there's no intrinsic meaning or prescribed meaning from the universe. And therefore I get to find joy in the meaning that I do find out of it. Because Landon, keep in mind, if God doesn't exist and if your faith isn't true, then the thing you got meaning from wasn't those things. You didn't actually get purpose and meaning from God if God doesn't exist. You didn't get it from the religion if the religion is untrue. You got it out of what you made of those things.
No, you're absolutely right.
I want to recommend a website for you to go to. I just want to make sure that it's still active, legit. Yes. Go to theatheistbook.com. Full disclosure, this is a book put together by someone who I'm friends with several years ago, where he ran around and photographed and interviewed atheists from all around the world. I think there's like over 50 in there. I don't quote me on the number, but it's like AC Grayling, Adam Pascal, Alex Honnold, Cara Santa Maria, Carol Blue, Christopher Hitchens. Carol's is Hitchens' widow. Charles Strauss, Dan Dennett, Darren Brown, Donald Johnson, James Randi, Watson, Janet Asimov. It keeps going on. Julius Sweeney, Lawrence, tons of people in there. And all of this is about their thoughts on joy and meaning in a world without a God belief. And these interviews he put together into a documentary as well. Full disclosure, I'm featured in the documentary, so you'll get my thoughts as well. But the book is outstanding, and it's one of a handful of books that I recommend to people. And if you're not able to get a copy of the book, send me an email, and I'll find a way to either get you a copy of the book or the documentary. But
okay, thank you.
Sure.
Cool. So last thing I got for you, Landon, is if you want to encourage other people to be skeptical, do exactly the exercise we did yourself more, and then share with how you do that with other people. Because again, remember, as far as the actual meat of a belief, you called in, you shared your belief. We didn't tell you what was wrong with the belief. We asked you to think about and tell us what you think we would say. And by the time you said it, you went, crap, this isn't a belief worth holding on to in at least the affirmative. Yeah. Do that. Just keep doing that and you'll be fine.
And if you ever find that your theistic beliefs have a good evidential warrant,
call us.
Please let me know.
Yeah.
Will do. I've listened to your story and, like probably 6 or 7 hours straight of you just, deconstructing these really basic fallacious arguments that people hold to. And I don't want to be in that boat.
Yeah. You and me both. All right, Landon.
Thank you for.
Thanks so much for the call.
Appreciate you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
See ya.
So if we don't get another theist call for the rest of the day, I see there are other theists. I will at least be happy that we have yet another example of a theist call that, now granted, to be fair, some of the other theist callers out there are going to look at this and say, well, this is a person who's barely a believer anyway, and they're not here. They're not calling in to believe. They're on their way out of, they're very favorable, look very favorable on you and everything else. Yes, I appreciate that. But here's a challenge. If you're a theist and you want to write off Landon as no true Scotsman, or however you want to do it, call in and tell us what was wrong with that call.
I was just going to say the exact same thing.
Call in and tell us why Landon is wrong about anything that he said and how you can demonstrate that. Because genuinely, if you can prove Landon wrong, I'm with you. Let's do it. Yeah. I've said it countless times, and I mean it. If you prove that there's a God, I will absolutely no longer be an atheist. I may not worship that God. I may sit here and talk shit about that God. I may rail against that God as an immoral piece of crap, but I will absolutely no longer be an atheist.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, I mean, the theist, if you've got a problem with not just Landon, with how, if you think you can call and say, well, the advice you gave as skeptics was manipulative because X, Y, or Z. You want to tell us what we did wrong in the call with Landon? I'd take that call from a theist or an atheist. Yeah. You want to call in and tell us how our advice or our guidance or whatever was also wrong? Do it. Bring it on.
Good day, sunshine.
We only have one more theist. We had 2 other theists, and I don't know why the other one dropped. So if you were that theist on hold, I encourage you to call back. We'll take you probably directly after this call, unless another theist calls in as well. We do have a couple atheist calls queued up, but we have room for more theistic callers. And Landon was the proof that it doesn't all end in yelling and hang-ups like you all seem to love to forget with your confirmation bias assholes.
Although it's rare enough that we are making a big deal out of it, which is fair.
That could be true.
I genuinely wish, like, anybody who thinks that I'd rather have the debate I had on Friday or the angry yelling conversations that have happened many times instead of like the one with Landon, you're nuts. I mean, I don't do this just to get my heart rate up.
Yeah. All right, let's take, I'm going to ask.
Before you do, I have to add one other thing. And as Jimmy reminds me constantly, I didn't do this for the money, but because this is actually a for-profit venture here at the Line, I am one of the last ones to do what I'm supposed to do, which is read the description down there below the chat, find out the information, because you can not only support this show and all of the other programs on the Line Network. And this is a proper network where it's not just Matt and Jimmy on the Sunday show. On Mondays, you got Skeptalk. On Tuesdays, you got Dying Out Loud with Dave Warnock. Wednesdays, I do a show called The Hang Up, which tends to venture closer to political issues, but I'm happy to talk to theists then as well. And on Thursdays, you've got the Transatlantic Call-In Show, not to mention the fact that we will occasionally do Cause I Want Us and other things. We have Patreon support if you'd like to support that way. There's Cash App, there's Amazon Wishlist. There are plenty of things that we are building towards, not just new shows and new debates, but also there's LineCon next year, coinciding with a total solar eclipse here in Austin, Texas. There's a lot going on, and I know we haven't done this since January, and it's mainly just because Jimmy and I are both crazy busy on a number of different projects, but I'm genuinely hoping that we can start having at least a monthly local dinner thing like we did once before, so that we're continuing to build a community in this area. And not just to make this a plug for give us money, but do give us money. The other thing is, even if you don't give us money, thank you for participating. Thank you for watching. Thank you for encouraging other people to watch and trying to get people to call so that maybe we can get more callers like Landon. What's next, Jimmy?
Patreon.com/call the line. And to the end of that meetup thing that you just mentioned, it's atheists, humanists. What is it? Austin atheists, Austin humanists, atheists, and skeptics. The anagram is AHAs. The AHAs acronym is AHAs. Anyway, we'll soon, even if we don't do an in-person this month, I am planning to do some Zoom sort of planning meetings, seeing what ideas people have for future ventures, future adventures and stuff. I wouldn't be, if August is as hot as July, good luck getting me to an event in August, but
True.
Certainly September.
I just bought a second air conditioner for the garage, and it's not working any better than the first one, so
it's miserable.
Yeah.
It's been so bad. All right. I'm going to let you tell us how to pronounce your name. So the caller from Brighton in the UK, how should we address you?
That's Lawton.
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 Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, Lawton if you like.
I do like. What did you want to call about?
It's quite interesting that I'm just following Landon, because I'm in not a similar position, but I would describe myself as a theist, but I'm not. I wouldn't put my name against any particular religion, and I think it's a position that a lot of people hold, but seems to be almost ignored in discussions like this or in media in general. And I was just sort of interested in what your thoughts were, and also what your general thoughts are about my apparent wishy-washy position of, I believe in something, but I don't know what it is.
So the short version said that you describe yourself as an agnostic theist, which, by the way, I would say most theists, even Christians, that I talk to when you get down to brass tacks, would identify as an agnostic theist. Some of them would claim that they're Gnostic. And so the first questions that I was going to have for you, you kind of answered in the last couple of seconds, because I was going to say, okay, I know you're not necessarily putting a name of Yahweh or Christianity or whatever else, but I was going to say, what are the characteristics of the God you believe in, and how did you arrive that those are the characteristics? But it seems that you're saying you don't even know the characteristics of the thing you believe, and I don't know how that's possible. So when you say you believe something, but you don't know what it is, could you say with any specificity what it is that you believe? Like, I believe there's a governing thinking agent.
I think that I'm trying to be absolutely honest with you and absolutely honest with myself, that I'll go to the very beginning. When I was 16, I was in a very serious accident, and I had the traditional, almost typical near-death experience. I saw it. I had the tunnel. I had the family. I had somebody else who at the time I thought was Jesus or Christ or that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what I think keeps me in my theist position. I can't deny I can't deny that to myself. So I've got that, but also there's there does seem to be an agency to life.
Let's not jump ahead to that. If you've got multiple examples, let's take them one at a time.
Yeah.
So you had a near-death experience. I just want to make sure I heard the details right. Where you saw your family, a figure that you associate with Christ. Was there something else?
Yeah, the classic tunnel that people describe. I
Sure.
was 16 at the time, and I was sort of not very religious, but I was sort of brought up as a Christian. So
Sure.
if I was going to see any religious figure, I suppose it would have been a Christ-like figure.
But if you were going to see any figure, it was going to be a Christ-like figure. Does that suggest to you that you had a near-death experience with an actual Christ, or that in a near-death experience you visualized a Christ? Because what you just said sort of implies that if you'd been raised Muslim, maybe you would have seen somebody else. If you'd been raised Hindu, maybe it would have been somebody else.
Yeah, I like I say, I'm trying to be as honest with you as possible and honest with myself as possible, and I think that could be the case, which is where I'm at, which is why I'm at where I am in my journey at the moment. That to sum it up, I believe in something, but I can't tell you. I can't even tell myself what it is.
Can you? Okay, so that's the sentence that I want to focus on. You believe in something, but you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Is there anything about this something that you can describe? Like, the something I believe is definitely conscious, or definitely governing the universe, or definitely created the universe, or without any characteristic, without any quality. I don't know what it means to say I believe in something, but I don't know what it is, because even for the things that I don't understand fully, like, let's say I'm not convinced that a multiverse exists, but I could completely understand someone saying, I'm convinced that some sort of multiverse exists that is the source of our universe, but I don't have any details about it other than it's the source of that universe. But I don't know how to deal with somebody saying, I believe in something, but I don't know what it is, because that's literally every possibility. That's a god and not a god. Well, if it turns out the thing that you believe in is not a god, well, we might believe it.
Well, yeah, sorry to bring you into my into my problems, but yeah, that's pretty much how I feel. It's just something that I do believe in quite strongly, that there is something. Like I said, I feel there's an
sorry, because we're getting to the same problem, just saying something. So let me ask a couple of direct questions about the something.
Sure.
Going back to the near-death experience, right? You believe that there is some explanation for it. You don't currently know what the explanation is. That's true?
Yeah.
Is one of the explanations which you entertain, is one of the things that it could be a totally natural explanation where you have something that is essentially a type of dream when you're in this near-death state?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's quite well documented, isn't it? That when the brain shuts down, there's neurons firing, and
so you
and
entertain.
like
you definitely entertain natural explanations. Do you also entertain a supernatural explanation for that?
Yes.
Why?
I think that is where it is. That is what I feel, but I really believe that. But there's no way that I'd want or expect you to believe it as well, because it was such a personal experience. But because it felt so real at the time, that I can't. And I have tried to sort of say, oh, it's just neurons firing and that, but I can't accept that myself, if that makes any sense at all.
so you're not, so I sounds to me like you're saying that you're convinced that it's supernatural because you're not convinced that this could be just natural.
I think what I'm saying is that I don't want to close that particular door.
Okay, not closing a door, not closing. So saying I don't want to rule something out is not the same as saying I'm going to rule that in. Like, I haven't ruled out the supernatural. I have no belief that there's anything supernatural. As a matter of fact, I actively believe that the supernatural is almost certainly not the case, but I haven't ruled it out. If somebody can present evidence for the supernatural, I'm in. So I've heard this from many people, and I'm hoping maybe Lawton, you can be the one that ties this together. When you say that you think there's something more than the natural because you don't want to rule that out, how is that functionally different from saying I don't want to rule out magic because I can't, and because I can't, I'm going to go ahead and believe that it's possible, and because it's possible, I'm going to believe that it's probable. It's like this slippery slope of I can't prove it's not magic, so I'm going to go ahead and descend into thinking, yeah, it might be magic.
I actually think, Lawton, I think I might understand. I'm going to steal Matt's metaphor just now and ask you if this is what you're saying. Imagine a person, anybody. You've got a 15-year-old who is having a magic trick done for them, and the magic trick is to make a rabbit in front of them first disappear, then reappear, and then it turns into a greyhound. All right, so it's a really cool. It would be a very complex trick to pull off, and it's done very up close, and it seems impossible. And that 15-year-old watches that trick, and it is never explained to that 15-year-old how the trick is done. But because they were there and they saw it so up close, and it felt so significant, and it felt like if any sort of sleight of hand was afoot, there's no way something that big and that important could have been done just as a natural matter of illusion. And so that 15-year-old says, I am not going to say that it isn't actual magic. And in fact, it seems so improbable to me because of what a big deal it was to me that it isn't magic, that I'm going to actually leave. Basically, I'm going to sit in the camp of, I actually think it probably was magic and I can't let it go that it wasn't. Is that where you are with your near-death experience? Did it feel so big and important to you that you can't let the metaphorical magic of it go because it feels larger than what you understand natural explanations have?
I think so, but also, like I say, I was brought up a Christian, and very, religion wasn't really spoken about much in my family, but in Britain here, when I was growing up, we had school assemblies and, singing religious songs every day. So there's also the fact that there's a feeling, it's almost a Pascal's wager thing, if you like, that I feel like maybe, I've got to lead a life where I feel that there is something maybe watching over me. But having said that, I can't I don't know what it is. Sorry, I keep saying that, and it's not getting us very further, but that's how
earlier you were going to give us another example after the near-death experience. Do you want to go ahead and give us that now?
Yeah, it's just the general sort of feeling of that there is agency, and I know as human beings we are designed to see patterns, and it just feels like I should be here now for this reason. It feels like there is something guiding. There's that. There is that side of things as well.
So I'll be honest with you. I think you said it was Lawton. Am I getting it right?
Lawton.
Lawton.
Will
I'm going to say it the way you want it said. I'm going to be honest with you. I think what you're saying boils down to, I can't let go of the magic because it means too much to me. I can't, and that I have a level of incredulousness that incredulity feels better explained by magic I can't account for than the possibility that there are just answers that might still be complex and huge and beautiful, but because it wouldn't be as cool as living in a world with that magic, and I don't mean to use the word in a condescending way. I know some religious people don't like it being called magic, but that I don't want to live in the world where I'm not feeling like I'm interacting with magic. And it's very much seems like that's what's at play. You can disagree with me if you like. If you agree, I want to know if you would accept somebody else's belief on that same basis.
Right, a couple of things there is, if I'm honest, I don't really want there to be magic. I'd like to be firm in my belief that there is nothing after we die, and that's it, and then that we just fall asleep and forever. That I'd be happy with that.
I get that, and I don't actually think that's the thing that we're addressing. I think we're addressing your discomfort with the unknown and the I don't knows, and that you're more comfortable adding magic to an I don't know than leaving an I don't know that seems appropriate. Like your near-death experience, you even mentioned it's pretty well documented. You got neurons firing, that people are having dreams that in those states people aren't dead. There's dead and then there's dead. And it does sound like to me that it's a discomfort with an unknown and an I don't know, and I just don't know why you would take it's just like this week on Threads, and Matt, I bet you've had the exact same experience as me, and probably also on Twitter. How many people have been interacting with the word unidentified this week to mean aliens exist and the government confirmed it? Because the answer of unidentified means aliens exist is way cooler and way more exciting and gives you a sense of mystery and magic. And this week it's been driving me crazy when actually people I like and respect have been acting as though the government has confirmed aliens exist.
I have questions related to this. I don't want to try to get into Lawton's motivations or anybody else's until we figure out and we can speculate. Lawton said something a minute ago where he said something to the tune of, it just feels like there's somebody guiding this and there's a purpose. What can you describe that? I know it's difficult. I have no idea what that feeling feels like.
Yeah.
And so, if somebody tells me, hey, I feel itchy. Okay. That I get. I feel like I'm being watched. Okay. That I can get. When somebody says it feels like there's a guiding intelligence guiding my life, I have no idea what that feels like. And if you can't describe it, that's fine. I'm just wondering if you have any description for that and how you could tell the difference between something feels like somebody's guiding my life and something when nobody is, and it feels like somebody's guiding my life when somebody actually is. Because if I can't tell the difference between those two, then they're functionally identical. But I don't know what the feeling feels like.
No, and I it's not something that I could really describe to you, I don't think.
Okay. Then skip the ineffable part. And let's say you have a feeling that somebody's guiding your life and you're correct. And you have a feeling that somebody's guiding your life and you're incorrect. What method could you or anybody else use to tell the difference between those situations?
I don't think there is a way.
So then that would seem to be an admission that you have no good reason to think you're correct, and that you being correct is at least as likely as you being incorrect from the evidence that you have. And so if there's no I get, I'm not expecting you to go, aha, what a brilliant thing. And now I stop. I'm of the position that once I realize I can't tell the difference between two things, I no longer have the ability to pick between them.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I think it is I'm going to use the door analogy again. The near-death experience was so strong, the feeling inside me is so strong, I'm not going to say I don't believe there's a God, or not a God, a deity, a whatever. We could be in a vat, I'm open to that as well.
But will you, as a result of that, say, I do believe there is a God?
At the moment, I would say yes. I believe there's something.
So weirdly, the thing you just said is, so here's something that comes up over and over again. You just said that because the experience, or your near-death experience, was so strong, you can't say that you don't believe in a God. I'm wondering if the truth, and I'm not suggesting, when I say the truth, I'm not suggesting you're being dishonest. I can understand saying, I had an experience and it was so impactful that it's impossible for me right now to say there is no God. But that's a different statement. Saying there is no God is different from saying I don't believe that a God exists. What would be the problem of saying I am not convinced that a God exists? Because that to me seems to be an accurate description that you have your thoughts. You recognize you don't have evidence for it. You recognize you don't have a way of telling the difference between whether or not you're correct. And so I would have to say that you do not believe that a God exists. And what you're unwilling to say, which is fine, is that you believe there is no God. But nobody's asking you to say that. Or at least I'm not. What's wrong with saying I'm not convinced that a God exists?
Sorry, can you say that again? What
would be the problem with you, with your experience, saying, I am not convinced that a God exists?
I don't know. It's the honest answer to that.
Cool.
But based on what I've evidence in my life, like I say, the almost the agency I feel, and the death, I can't say that. So at the moment, I believe a God exists, or something exists, but it's a very thin line. I could be nudged the other side of that line and maybe see it from a slightly different point of view. And functionally in my life, I don't think it affects the way I lead my life.
Okay. I don't know that I have anything to add other right now, other than to keep thinking, because it's a source of frustration for me to watch someone say, I don't have any way of telling the difference between whether this claim is true or not true, but I don't want to say that I'm not convinced that it's true. When they don't also say, I don't want to say that I'm not convinced it's false. It is clear that you are leaning towards one of two options while acknowledging that you have no reason to lean towards either of them. And I would argue that a reasonable evaluation of all of the evidence gives anyone a reason to lean against the notion of a God existing. The fact that we know things about how the brain works, we know things about near-death experiences, we know what religious iconography people are likely to see based on what they're raised with and what religion they're in at the time, or what religions they've heard about, that the concept of a soul is, as I've said, the single most dead concept ever, that this stuff doesn't make sense. And if it were true, it would be absolutely unimportant, because it means that there's a being that gave you an experience you don't understand, but fails to give you evidence to warrant believing that he exists. And any being who will not give you sufficient evidence that they exist cannot count your belief in their existence as something substantive and worth evaluating. So it's like, you think there's a God there, but he's just fucking with you. And that's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, but I mean, that could be what God's like. He
Lawton,
just exists to fuck with people.
On the off chance that you're somewhat like me and it would be useful, I think the last thing I'm going to do is just share a couple of terms with you that I don't know how familiar you are with fallacies, but it was useful when I was going through my own stuff to learn what these things were and then see how I might be applying them to myself. There's a fallacy called the argument from incredulity that I think would be useful for you. And then regarding your agency argument, I think the learning about confirmation bias is going to be something very useful to you, because it kind of reminds me of the way that believers treat mundane hopes being accomplished as though they've won a lottery, and ignore all the times that their hopes didn't come to fruition. Sort of the agency stuff you were talking about. So if I can give you some homework before maybe we have another conversation about this in the future, I would say look up those two things, arguments from incredulity, and which I think is related to your attachment to your near-death experience, and confirmation bias, which I think is related to your agency deal.
Yeah, I do understand both of those terms, but I will look into it more, and hopefully we can talk again.
Yeah, it's definitely good to learn about them more than just a headline. They are things that there should be entire classes dedicated to, and we should probably make kids take those classes.
Totally agree with that.
Sure.
Okay, well, thank you. It's great talking to you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks a lot, Loudon.
Cheers. Bye.
All right. Moving to Shannon in Georgia. Shannon in Georgia, you are on the line with Jimmy and Matt.
Hey, Jimmy. Hey, Matt. Can you hear me?
Sure do.
We hear you. How you doing?
Hello. Hey, I'm doing well, thanks. Hey, Matt. I've seen several of your debates with theists and know a little bit about your background, but not a lot. So, and I just taught a little bit of the last caller and a half, so I apologize if I asked any repeated questions. But so there's been like a lot of talk about truth, it seems, and proof, and I think that's what we all want, right? I think we should all be is truth pursuers wherever the truth.
I would hope so. You'd be surprised at how many people I've talked to who actually don't care about truth.
I understand. I've come across it too, and to be honest, I used to be that way, but I've tried to be, like for. I just want to go where the truth leads me. So, like from an atheist perspective, what? How do you know what is true? Like just science and the evidence, is that how you know how you make a truth claim?
So generally speaking, I'm part of the group that has a philosophical view that truth is that which comports to reality. And so then the question becomes, how much can we actually know and understand about reality, and how accurate can we be? And the only thing that I can really point to is that the various scientific methods have demonstrated to be the most consistently reliable methods for modeling reality. Everything that science doesn't tell you what is truth. Science creates a model that has some probabilistic comparison to truth. And so it's all about figuring out, evaluating the evidence to see what the facts of reality are. So like we're stuck. Like if I drop these glasses, they'll fall. I'm not going to, just because I don't want to break my glasses. But if I drop them, they're going to fall. We know that through direct experimentation and observation. Somebody could say, yeah, but you got that information from your senses, and you can't prove that you're not a brain in a vat being fed, or you're in the matrix being fed a reality. And you're right, or whoever would say that, I can't prove that I'm not in the matrix. But if I'm willing to accept that you and I share a reality, now all of a sudden I have the option of going for independent verification and confirmation of things. So yes, the short version of your question is that the facts about reality through investigation create a model of reality that is never fully accurate, but is as accurate as we can find. And if there's a God, or if there's a ghost, or the Loch Ness Monster, or leprechauns, if any of those things are real, and they manifest in reality in some detectable way, then it is possible for us to investigate them through some method that attempts to remove our subjective bias and creates the most accurate model we can. And unfortunately, nobody's demonstrated how to do that for any supernatural claim. So when I say, is something true, I did a debate Friday night. And the subject was, is Christianity true? And you go back, skip forward to the 11-minute mark when I start talking, listen to my 10-minute opening there if you want to. Because what I did was I talked about different types of claims and how we would normally verify they're true.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, hello?
Yeah, you're here.
Okay, I'm just having a hard time on my phone. There's a delay. I'm sorry. So, you want evidence for a God? I mean, to be God. So, and I can't prove. And I heard you ask the guy on the other call, can you prove to me that there is a God? And I would say no. I can't prove to you that there is a God.
How did you prove it to you then?
I don't. How did I prove it to me? Well, I just, I think the same way that you came to the conclusion that there was not a God.
No. So first of all,
well, I mean, let me. Okay, go ahead.
So hang on. First of all, it may be the case that I haven't come to the conclusion that there isn't a God.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke. You don't know that there's a God. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, you are convinced that the statement "some God exists," you are convinced that statement is true, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not convinced. And when I ask you to demonstrate that it's true, you say, or you said a minute ago, that you can't do that. And so all I'm asking is, how did you demonstrate to yourself that statement was true?
Well, I'm very simple-minded, and and I'm not as read up on. So I just thinking truth per se, how can we make any? And this is maybe just a more philosophical answer, but I think at least my worldview allows for it, and you can point out the weakness in my view, which I'm sure you will, but even making a truth claim, how can you even live through a life where you don't know anything is true?
Okay, so first of all,
we know they had to be okay. Yeah, you just tell me the conversation. I'll do better that way. I'll do better with that way.
Well, you asked a question. I'm trying to answer it, and more accurately, I'm trying to correct it. I don't live a life where I don't know anything is true. I live a life where there's no certainty, but because my definition of truth is that which comports to reality, the only thing that matters is whether or not something comports to reality. I believe that this package of Ritz crackers, when I let go of it, will drop to my desk. And that's how I demonstrate this thing consistently. When I say you are convinced that some God exists and you can't prove it to me, and then I ask, how did you prove it to yourself? All I'm saying is, what convinces you that the statement "some God exists" is true? Your criteria could be a hot mess. You could have logical fallacies. You could be correct and have really good evidence. I don't know what the case is. All I'm saying is, you're convinced that there's a God. What convinces you?
Well, let's just start from creation, from the beginning. So, I just think it makes more sense with the environment and the reality that I'm living in, because I've never seen nothing produce something. So even just the world around me, in the reality that we live in, where everything we see has a creator or a builder or an architect or some kind of intelligent design behind it. I think I'm looking at the same world, and I'm just saying, this great big world that we live in, it seems to me that our reality, our present reality, in our and that we're living in, would seem to point that there had to be an intelligent design. I think faith.
Why?
Our faith, maybe the definition that we have of faith, may be the same thing.
I doubt it.
Faith is reasoning and action. Like,
No,
I think
that's
I've got
not.
good
That's
reason.
no, sir. That's not my definition of faith, nor is it a useful definition of faith. My definition of faith is the excuse people give for believing something when they don't have a good reason. Because if you ask why you believe something and you have a good reason,
That's not my.
I don't care.
I just give you my reason. Okay.
No, you said you think we might. You said you think we have the same definition of faith, and we don't.
No, I'm talking about the reason for. I'm talking about the reason for believing in a creator.
So first, no, hang on. You just raised a thing about faith and its definition. You said that faith is reason in action. I am challenging your definition, Shannon.
Okay, I'm not. Okay, I'm not.
Then stop interrupting me. I sat here and let you give your definition. I'm saying you said that your definition of faith is reason in action. And I'm saying that's not a definition of faith that I would use. It is not the definition that anybody I know of uses. It is not the definition of faith from the Bible. And it is not an accurate representation of what people mean when they say it's an issue of faith. Generally, when people say they take it on faith, they're saying that they don't have a good reason, that they have to accept this without a good reason, much the same way that you said you can't prove it to me. And so I ask, what proves it to you? Now, what you said when we let you try to explain is look at creation, look at the beginning. It just makes more sense with the environment and such. And you've never seen nothing create something. That is a confused mishmash of things, none of which is evidence for a creator. It's just you basically saying, I've never seen nothing create something, which, by the way, isn't necessarily the case and isn't relevant to whether or not there's a God or which God. Your model, I would presume, I'm presuming that you're a standard Christian of some stripe, correct?
I don't know what you mean by standard. I mean, I'm a Christian.
Do you accept the Bible and one of the normative denominations of Christianity?
Yes, sir.
So did God create something out of nothing?
I believe that's my worldview. Yes, sir.
Cool. So you're the one who has the worldview that thinks something was created out of nothing. I don't have that worldview. So it's not the case that, oh my God. Of the two of us, you're the one that has a something from nothing worldview, and yet you're saying you've never seen something come from nothing. First of all, whether or not you've seen it is irrelevant to whether or not it can happen or did happen. Second of all, if your worldview is the one that has something coming from nothing, you're the one that has to demonstrate that. My worldview does not include something coming from nothing, because my worldview doesn't hold that a nothing could exist, because if a nothing exists, then it's a something. It has properties. So when I ask what convinces you that a God exists, it seems that your answer is something had to come from nothing, and I think a God did that.
Okay. Are you? Can I respond?
Yes, that's what I'm waiting for.
Okay. I wasn't trying to be combative. I'm honestly just trying to understand, because I've never had a lot of. I'm trying to learn and not misrepresent your position. Please don't take offense.
That's all I'm going to do. If you misrepresent my position, I'm going to correct it, and then we can move on. It's clear. I've been doing this for 20 years. You've been doing this for 20 seconds. All I'm trying to do is when I ask, why do you believe? And you give me a reason, I'm going to give what my response is. Right now, you're the only one of the two of us that believes in something from nothing, while simultaneously saying you don't believe in something from nothing because you've never seen it, which is a bad reason. That's like saying, I don't believe there's a black swan because I've never seen one. Well, that's irrelevant to whether or not there is one. So what makes you think that something came from nothing?
Well, from what I understand, if it was an intelligent design, if there wasn't a intelligent design in the beginning, and the world didn't come, that seems to be the two main arguments that I know of how the universe started.
You're not answering. You're not answering my question.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you ask me again, and I'll try to answer?
Yes. Why do you think that something came from nothing?
Why do I think something came from nothing? Because I look at the evidence that I'm in right now, in the present reality that I'm living in, and I look at what comports to my reality, and I see a builder builds a building. And you've heard all this stuff before. This is nothing new to you.
Yes, that is not in any way an answer to the question that I asked you. And I'm going to ask you for a third. I'm going to ask you for a third time now. Why do you think that something came from nothing?
I don't think something came from nothing.
I asked you before, and you said
I think
that
God created it.
From nothing.
I think God, in the beginning, created the world that we're living in.
What did he create it from?
I asked you before if God created.
I have no idea what he created it from.
I asked you before if God created everything from nothing, and you said yes.
I don't know what was there in the beginning with God.
Then why did you say yes when I asked you? We've now wasted 5 minutes because you said yes to something, and now you want to say you didn't say it.
I didn't. I apologize if I did. I misspoke. I misanswered your question. I think God, whatever was in the beginning, what was with God, I don't know how God exactly done what he done, but I think to what I'm seeing and what I'm living in, the reality that I'm in, that is the best explanation that I have for a beginning.
Okay, let me just ignore everything else and just deal with that last sentence. Do you think that at any given moment, that if something is the best explanation you personally can come up with, that it's okay to believe that it's true? Like rational to believe that it's true?
The best statement the best reason that I have to believe in something, the best statement.
Okay, hang on. Let me try this again, Shannon. Hang on. Okay. Let's say we find a dead body, and you look around at the world and the available evidence, and the best explanation you can come up with is that the butler did it. Does that mean that you should believe the butler did it?
No.
Cool. Awesome. Then let's do the same thing. We'll replace universe, or we'll put universe in place of a dead body, and we'll put you laugh it up. We'll put God in place of the butler. And you've just demonstrated that the sentence you said before, that the reason you believe that God did it is because it's the best explanation you have at the time. Well, you've just acknowledged that's not a good enough reason to believe something.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So by your own admission and your own model, you don't have a good reason to believe that God did it.
Okay.
What reason do you have to believe that God is even a candidate explanation? Like, for example, what if it turns out there is no butler?
So then I change my worldview and I go on to believe in something else.
Yeah, but
I would have
the
to
issue
believe
is
the butler done it, and I'm trying to seek truth. I'm not.
But if you're going to try to seek truth, you need to seek the methods that most consistently produce truth. How is I look around at the world and this is the best explanation I come up with? Is that a reliable path to truth?
Well, I think out of what we have, it's the most. To me, it's the most reliable. As you said, reality.
Am I? How many people are in the room with you right now?
Nobody.
Nobody. Are you the smartest person in the room you're in?
I guess I am.
Yeah. I'm the smartest person in the room that I'm in right now, too. That doesn't tell us at all which of us is smarter. I'm the funniest person in the room that I'm in. And you're probably you're definitely the funniest person in the room you're in. But that doesn't tell us which of us is funnier. So saying that something is the best explanation you have right now doesn't tell us whether or not that's true. That's why science doesn't rely on individuals looking around and operating on a hunch. Science uses methods so that there's independent verification and testing and the ability to reproduce results and to falsify results. That's why scientists don't just publish papers where they say, well, based on what I saw when I looked around, the butler did it.
Matt, if you can find... I'm willing to go anywhere the science leads, and when the science says X, Y, and Z, I will take that and believe it. But you know as well as I do that there's Christian-based scientists and there's theist scientists, and they're all having the same arguments that we've all had. And
no,
you're a
see what you've
man.
done. What you've done here, Shannon. Shannon, what you're trying to do right now is shift the burden of proof. You're saying that you're willing to. Yes, you are, Shannon, because you're saying that you'll stop believing in God when science proves there isn't a God.
When they give me a better explanation than the one I have now.
You don't have a good enough explanation now. No, sir. You're not being rational. You do not get to say that you're being rational. Laugh it up. Laugh all you want. You're sitting there in fear and irrationality. And you're saying, I'm not going to change my mind until you prove that I'm wrong. That's not the way this works. You shouldn't hold your position until you can prove you're right.
Shannon, what's the mass of the Shannon, without Googling. Shannon, without Googling, what's the mass of the Higgs boson?
Oh, God.
No, just let me do this. Shannon, without Googling, what is the mass of the Higgs boson?
I don't know. I have no idea.
It's 42 pounds.
Okay.
Do you believe me?
I don't know. Should I believe you?
No. You should go get proof because it's not 42 pounds. It's the smallest particle that we can measure. And this is the entire thing you've just done. You said you didn't know an answer to a question, what the mass of the Higgs boson was. So I made up an answer. And by your logic that you just ran through, it would be better for all of us who don't know what it is to accept my answer of 42 pounds, which is impossible. It'd be better for us to accept that than just sit in the reality that we don't know something, or we actually go try and find out what the mass of the Higgs boson is.
All I'm simply saying is, from what I know, is
all you're simply saying is I'm not listening. Because this has already been explained to you so many different ways.
Matt just upset with what he
I'm not mad. I'll cut you off all I want. I just listen to the whole.
Whine and cry in addition to this because I've had about enough. I've tried to laugh it up. See, this proves that you are dishonest, that you don't care about the truth. Because if you actually cared about the truth, which is why you called in, then you would be acknowledging that I'm here acknowledging how to find the truth, and you're laughing.
Shannon hung up.
Your position is you can't prove God and I can't prove there is no God. I don't need to prove there is no God. The burden of proof is on the people who claim there is a God. You don't understand the basics of the burden of proof. And until you understand the basics of the burden of proof, you don't get to claim that you care about truth. Go ahead, hang up, run away.
Good luck,
run away.
By the way, go and defend that the Higgs boson is 42 pounds.
People. Unbelievable. I just want to know what the truth is. I just care about truth. I want to find the truth. I want to find the truth. Cool. How do you know? How do you tell the difference between, hey, there's a God and there's not a God? I don't know. I just look around at the world and this makes more sense. And I'll go wherever the science leads. Yes, but if you propose a solution that science cannot confirm and science cannot disconfirm, if your proposed solution is unfalsifiable, which means that it is incapable of being proven false, then congratulations. You will sit there in your supreme lack of confidence and nobody will ever prove you false. And you will still never be right. And you will still not have the truth. You can think the butler did it until your dying day, but you haven't even shown that there was a butler that existed at all.
Yeah. Goodness sakes. We have a couple atheists who've been waiting a while, and then a deist caller. We'll try and run through these here. Diana in Florida, you're on the line with Jimmy and Matt.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
I just have hello, nice to speak to you. I have a question. I've been trying for several years to research it, can't figure it out. A friend of mine joined what I believe is a religion, which required her to copy down word for word what I would call sacred text. And there is an element of UFOs in it. This is a very dear friend of mine that has, over the last 5 to 7 years, begun to change, not in a cultic way, but I cannot figure out what religion this could possibly be. Do you have any idea?
No, because there's too many.
You don't have a name?
Yeah. He said it's an alien-based religion, right?
Whether it's alien-based or, not like Heaven Gate alien-based, there's an alien element to it. So I know when she started this up, she asked me more than once, do you believe in UFOs or do you believe in aliens? And I said no.
Well, you should believe in UFOs. UFOs are on. I'm just being pedantic. Believing in UFOs doesn't mean you believe in aliens. It means you believe that there have been flying things that we haven't identified. That's all.
Well, yeah. Okay, so I'm using them synonymously. Maybe that is incorrect. So let's use aliens.
I get it. Go ahead.
Okay, so I cannot. I've researched so many religions, from Scientology, Raelism, I just on and on and on. I can't find one. It's like
you've now named all three. Sorry.
Well, there's maybe 10. Hang on. You have a friend, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not ask your friend what the name of the religion is?
Okay, I did. She speaks Spanish, so my understanding of what she was saying, I couldn't figure it out. And I have to say that she was abrupt. The few times I did ask her about it, she was kind of abrupt.
Then drop it. It's none of your business.
I just let it go.
Pardon me?
Drop it. It's none of your business. If she can't even tell you the name of the religion in a way where you can look it up and find out anything about it, then clearly she doesn't want you to know. I don't know how you've had any conversations with this person to determine anything they believe if the mere name of the religion is too difficult.
Yeah, the whole thing's very, very weird. You've named the big
I
three.
genuinely don't believe this call.
Yeah. The big three are Aurelian,
No,
Heaven's
those
Gates,
three
and
are-
Scientology, but it's none of those. So the
It's
big
not
thing is,
Scientology.
I get it. You said it wasn't any of those three, but you've called in with an obscure reference to a religion that might be 10 people in a living room. And they might be the only 10 people who believe in that religion. We have no reason to believe it's a mainstream one, that there would be cultural awareness. And at this point, I don't know how much I believe this person exists. It's just the whole call is weird.
Yeah, I don't understand how
I'm
someone can
sorry.
say, I have a friend who's a part of a religion. I worry about it. I know that she has to copy down the sacred texts of this religion, and she started acting strange. And when I say, ask her what the name of the religion is, your answer is she speaks Spanish. How did you have any other fucking conversation with her?
No, she speaks Spanish. So when she was relaying the name of the religion to me, it was not something that I could comprehend. I mean, I am going to ask her again.
Can you text this person?
Pardon me?
Can you text this person and have them text back the
can
name of their
absolutely-
religion? Then fucking
Yeah,
do
you know
that.
what?
I am not a miracle
Then I will.
worker who's going to fucking guess at whatever fiction you didn't bother to sort out. You got to do some of your homework.
Okay, I just didn't know if I've been doing it for 5 years, and it's
For 5
just been-
years and you haven't gotten the fucking name of the religion?
Diana, next time on the first day, get the name of the religion before you spend 5 years.
5 years.
What is okay? So it also says in the notes when you told the screener that the friend is now speaking another language. Did you just mean Spanish or an alien language?
No. She is first. Her native language is Spanish. She speaks pretty fluent English. She's a good friend of mine, but there's like a disconnect when it comes to this issue. You know, it's almost like I'm not supposed to.
Diana, we're not gonna take any more time on this call because it's just weird and I don't know really what's going on. Text your friend, ask her the name of the religion, then Google it. That's our advice for you. And if you want, you can shoot me an email, contact@qanaline.com. Because if this is a real call, I admit I'm curious.
It's a real call.
Sure. But other than that, I don't know what you thought we were gonna do. It's Mormonism. That's the answer. She's becoming a Mormon. There's aliens in Mormonism. There you go, Diana. Well, yeah. Have a good one. Good luck.
She speaks Spanish, but she speaks fluent English, and I've been at her for 5 years, and I can't get the name. Then it's none of your business.
Apparently, she doesn't want to tell you.
There's not a fucking friend in the world that I have who speaks the same language I do, supposedly fluently.
Yeah.
Who, if they asked me about religion, not only would you not get an answer of Matt speaks Spanish instead of the language we're actually discussing, but there wouldn't be any confusion. This doesn't make sense.
The whole thing was very, very strange. You got a preference on next call you want to do?
Nah, I'm good. Whatever you pick.
Let's see. They've been waiting a while too. So let's talk to Steve in New York, and then we'll do the deist after. Steve in New York, you are on the line with Jimmy and Matt.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate all you do. This fits in with that discussion you had with Shannon, and you raised the concept of falsifiability. For some reason, and I'm sure it's me, not you, I'm having trouble conceiving of just how that's applied. Like, say, the Loch Ness Monster is real. How would that falsifiability apply to that? Am I making sense here?
That statement may not be falsifiable. That's the problem.
And
So when
what does that mean? If it's not falsifiable, it's true.
Steve, wait.
Falsifiability is the capacity to show that the statement is false. If I say there are no black swans, then finding a black swan falsifies the statement. This is a principle which you can Google. It's on Wikipedia. It is a cornerstone. It is from philosopher Karl Popper, and there are countless books and videos and other things that would go into detail explaining the principle of falsifiability. But there's the easiest one. The statement "there are no black swans" is falsifiable by showing a black swan. That does not mean that the statement "there is a Loch Ness monster" is falsifiable. There's a difference between something being falsifiable in principle, which means, yes, we could do an exhaustive search of Loch Ness, drag the whole thing and show that there, by the definition of what the Loch Ness monster is, it does not exist there. But there's a difference between that and whether or not it's practical to falsify something. There could be a Loch Ness monster on Mars that we will never be able to demonstrate practically, but the statement "there's no Loch Ness monster on Mars" is falsifiable in principle by finding a Loch Ness monster on Mars.
I suppose the closest falsifiable Loch Ness monster thing would be there is a Loch Ness monster in Loch Ness. While we may not actually have very good ways to drain Loch Ness and eliminate every corner it could be in, that would technically be a falsifiable statement.
In principle.
Okay.
Yeah, principally.
I'm still having trouble again. Well, let's apply it to religion. Is the statement Jesus is God, is that falsifiable or not falsifiable, and why?
I don't think it's falsifiable. I don't know how you would show that that's false.
So it would that would lead to the conclusion that it's possible he is.
No,
or
no,
I guess.
no, no. The fact that something isn't the fact that something isn't falsifiable tells you nothing about whether or not it's possible. Possibility needs to be demonstrated.
So what's the significance then of falsifiability with this whole discussion about whether there's a God or not? Coming from, I'm an agnostic atheist, I describe myself. So what's the significance of something being falsifiable?
The significance and the issue of falsifiability comes from Karl Popper and the philosophy of science, and it exists to show which statements can be scientifically investigated. If you have a hypothesis that is not falsifiable, it is not testable because there is not anything that could demonstrate it to be false. That's the whole purpose, is to say, do we have a testable hypothesis? If it's not capable of being falsified in principle, then your hypothesis isn't testable and it will not be scientific.
Okay, I think that helps. And again, I love your show. Thanks.
Thanks so much. The key thing.
I was just going to say, Steve, I think what you may have been functionally trying to find out is why we bring it up, which is that so often people act as though the statement, you can't prove God doesn't exist or something like that, then provides an equality between the positions. And that is when things like that show up, because it doesn't, as Matt just mentioned. Merely saying that something isn't falsifiable does not make it suddenly possible. But there is a falsifiable statement regarding God, and it would be the statement there that no gods exist. And were theists wanting to falsify that statement, they would merely need to present the God.
Okay, I think that helps. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Steve. That was it. I think you had a thought that we were both trying to go at the same time.
I lost it.
Cool.
Sorry.
Cool. All right. Alex in California believes in an impersonal God. Alex in California, you are on the line with Jimmy and Matt.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going.
Awesome. This is only the second time I've ever done this, so I get pretty nervous and sometimes I lose my brain. So I'm going to try my best.
Just go for it. I'm going to take notes.
Do you guys have any questions based off of the notes that the call screener took, or should I just start?
I have loads of questions, but it says here you have a thought experiment that demonstrates the point, so present the thought experiment.
Okay. So the point is that I think that deism is at least as reasonable as atheism. Basically, I'm not saying that it's necessarily more reasonable, but then
I don't give a shit.
I want to hear the point. I do want to hear the thought.
I think I can prove you wrong in 22 seconds, but I want you to go ahead and give your thought experiment. But I genuinely don't give a fuck if somebody thinks that deism is at least as reasonable as atheism, and I think that they're wrong. But
I'm actually really curious why you don't care about that. If it was as reasonable, why would that not matter? Because that would mean that a bunch of people could be deists and also call themselves reasonable.
They're wrong. I can demonstrate that deism. I can demonstrate that deism is not as reasonable as atheism. But you have a thought experiment, so present it.
Okay, I see. Okay, so my thought experiment is basically imagine a whole population of people that wake up with a special type of amnesia, where basically they still retain their general intelligence, but they don't have any memory of anything. Like they don't have any nouns in their vocabulary. They have absolutely no idea what anything is, but they still have general intelligence. And they wake up with this amnesia in a city, and they're the only ones in that city. And so they go through the city and they start to basically reverse engineer all of the infrastructure and eventually develop a society. But once they've developed a society, it would be reasonable for some of those people to determine that the city was designed for them, right?
Well,
because in the beginning,
wow, it would be reasonable for them to determine that the city was designed. Whether or not it was designed for them is an open question.
Yeah, that was a pretty weird qualifier to add to it.
Okay. So basically what I'm saying is that at the beginning of this experience, the people wouldn't be able to determine, like, everything would be natural. They would just assume that everything was a part of their reality and that nothing was designed.
Because
they wouldn't know what anything is.
In your thought experiment, everything is natural, right? The city's still natural.
No, it's not.
What the fuck you mean it's not?
No, because
he's using the word natural to mean designed versus undesigned. He doesn't realize that if he's saying it's not natural, it would be supernatural. Right, Alex?
No, I understand that. I understand that. Yeah, what I mean by natural and unnatural is I mean like something that was designed by an intelligence versus something that grew like a tree.
Okay.
Like a building versus a tree, so the ground underneath the city would.
I'm fucking aware. A city is not analogous to a universe. We know and can determine that a city was designed because all of the evidence shows a city being designed, and no evidence points to a city occurring naturally. However, a universe.
No, I don't think you're understanding my point.
I don't think you're letting me fucking finish. How dare you tell me I'm not understanding your point? I've been doing this for 20 fucking years, and if you'll listen, I'm getting ready to show you why your point is flawed.
Mm-hmm.
A city, all of the available evidence for cities are that they do not occur naturally, but are the result of intentional. That's exactly what you're saying they could discover when they wake up from their amnesia, correct?
No, they never wake up from their amnesia. That's the point. The point is that it would be reasonable
Sorry. When they wake up, they have amnesia, so they don't remember how the world works. But then they have to investigate to discover how the world works. And when they investigate, they would find everything about the city None of it points to it being possible for it to occur naturally, and everything about it points to it being designed.
No, I disagree with that, because if you woke up and you didn't know what anything was, then you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a building and a tree. If you had never seen the building before and you didn't know that.
Shut up.
That's the whole point of the amnesia.
Shut the fuck up. Your thought experiment is that a population, I took notes, woke up with amnesia. They have general intelligence, but they don't have any nouns. They wake up in a city. They then reverse engineer the.
Shut up, Alex.
I swear to God, you say one more fucking word and I will They wake up and you said they reverse engineer the city. Did you say that?
They investigate and they discover and they find the
You
uses.
said
just
they
like
reverse engineer the city. Did you say that?
Yes, I did.
Then why are you not just saying yes?
Yes to what specifically?
To me asking you if you fucking said, did they reverse engineer the city?
Yes, but I meant something by that. So could I explain?
Not to me. Not to me, motherfucker. I'm done.
Okay.
I love we would never be able to recognize that a building is different than a tree. That was a fun argument. No, I have no interest in this, Alex, because Alex.
You did too.
You literally did say that.
Mute you.
You said that to a society with that amnesia, there would be okay.
You fucking liar.
You won't let anybody talk. You literally said that to a society with that amnesia, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a building and a tree as far as it's relative to its design. And by the way, there are sometimes complex structures that people do mistake for something that appears to be more designed or human interacted with, that turn out not to be. And sometimes it's just a natural phenomenon. And then sometimes it's things like giant sloth tunnels. We've never seen a giant sloth. We've never interacted with a giant sloth. And yet we can correctly identify that structures built by giant sloths were built by giant sloths. But I already know what this is. This is just a version of either it's going to be a combination of the fine-tuning argument or the watchmaker shit. You find a watch and clearly da-da-da-da-da. I don't know why you...
It is all argument from design, which is a teleological, which applies to fine-tuning and other things. His sloppy thought experiment, which I've dealt with many fucking times over the 20 years. This is elementary thought experiment about how do you recognize design. And you recognize design by contrasting it with that which naturally occurs. And anybody, whether you don't have to have your thought experiment of people waking up with amnesia, you could just say, we land on another planet. And on that other planet, we find a structure. How do we tell whether or not that structure is naturally occurring or whether or not it was designed? Well, it bears the hallmarks of design. The problem is that we know the hallmarks of design by investigating and showing what is designed and contrasting that with what naturally occurs. The second problem is that we have exactly one universe to investigate. We have nothing to compare it to, and everything about the universe suggests that it naturally occurs, and that everything from the moment of the origins of the universe when time began, from there on out, naturally occurred until there were thinking agents to begin doing design. Everything. This is why I was saying that all of it is still natural, and you correctly pointed out with regard with conflict with supernatural. So the universe has all of its evidence suggesting that it is naturally occurring and no direct evidence that it is designed, whereas a city has all of its available evidence pointing to that it's designed, whether it's designed by us or some aliens or somebody else, doesn't matter, and none of its evidence suggesting that it could be naturally occurring. So you've constructed a hypothetical contrast between a city and a universe. That's the analogy. Don't fucking pretend it's not. And the second I said it was, you accused me of fucking not understanding. I played this game longer than you probably have been alive. But the comparison of a city to a universe falls apart. Meanwhile, here's 22 seconds. I'm going to get my stopwatch to prove that deism is not at least as reasonable as atheism. Let me get on my stopwatch here. Timer. I've got 22 seconds. Deism is the proposition that a God exists that doesn't intervene in reality, which means that it's not detectable. So deists are claiming to detect the undetectable, whereas atheists are not believing in the assertion that there is something that is undetectable that one could detect. Almost 5 seconds to spare since I started a second into it.
All right, shall we unmute?
You can. I don't care what he says.
I'll see if it goes anywhere useful.
Hello?
Here you go, Alex. Take your own
talk?
22 seconds.
I don't know. Literally, when you unmuted him, it was, hello, are you there? Can I talk?
Can I talk? Yeah. Go ahead, Alex.
Okay. Wow. The condescension.
So, you're right. Bye. Fuck off.
Wow. The condescension.
Where do you think you are? Like, you don't want to be heard out. And we're the condescending one, by the way. With the thing that you brought here, the deism is as reasonable as atheism. You probably just don't understand this argument that you've already heard hundreds of times before. This is oh my God. It's
the job I literally get paid to do and have done volunteer for 20 years. I have countless videos up on the teleological arguments and thought experiments. I've engaged in countless debates with people on this, and you want to pretend that I don't understand your very elementary thought experiment making a city analogous to a universe in order. How do you detect design? Your thing is almost as bad as Ray Comfort's a building requires a building, and I can't do the accent. So.
Building requires a builder. Have a look at the banana. I was trying to see if this call would reconnect. There was a caller who was apparently very much trying to get through. I was warned that the caller was also quite rude, and if anything, I'm fine. You know, I don't mind blowing off a little steam at the end of a call, but it does look like that call is not successfully reconnecting. So we only have 7 minutes to spare anyway, though sometimes we go over.
You should give an update on the shows. And first of all, a huge thank you to our moderators. And I know that when I get amped up and all this other stuff, it makes their job more difficult. And Arden and I were actually talking last night how much we love and respect the moderators in there. So much so that when I jumped in the other day and Cuckoo was like, I got this, I was like, ooh, I'm not getting in your way. That may be the hardest job on this entire network. That we have just some wonderful volunteers doing, and their only goal is to make sure that we don't end up with a cesspool of name-calling bullshit in chat. Yeah. And I fully understand and acknowledge that of everybody on the line, I am probably the one that is most likely to enter hothead mode that is going to make their life more difficult. And for that, I'm not going to apologize, but I will say you have my undying respect and admiration for being willing to do that. So I love our mods and the call screeners and everybody. I mean, I love our producers. I love at least one of my producers. I probably love both of them, but one of them's more uncomfortable with me saying that. So
we're working on a third, and I think you'll like the third one.
I think I will too. I think I already do.
Cool. I assumed Arden had already let you know. Not making any announcements
speaks
yet.
To me.
Yeah.
The other producer whispers to me at night while we're sleeping.
That's the most annoying time to whisper. Wait till he's awake. Jesus. All right. I'm going to find out if the call while the person is trying to call back. We'll see how that goes. We'll see if the screener says that everything's good to go. In the meantime, this week on the line, we've got some awesome shows lined up for you. Tomorrow, Aron Ra will be joined with Rebecca Vitzman. If you all might remember Rebecca as the person whose activism began when Wolf Blitzer asked her about how her religion helped her feel safe during a tragedy, and she very boldly said, "I don't really believe in all that shit."
Actually, I'm an atheist, and she's a children's book author as well.
Yeah, she's awesome. I'll actually be joining Dave Warnock this week on Dying Out Loud. It occurred to him that of all the people he'd invited on, he had never invited me. So when he did, I said yes. Arden will be joining Matt. So we're really putting the producers in guest spots this week. On Wednesday on the Hang Up. And then this Thursday will be Arden Hart, but the current guest is to be announced. It's a very, very exciting announcement. And that's definitely not something I'm just saying because we haven't booked it yet. Could be that, but whoever it is, it's going to be worth the wait.
I believe you just as much as I believe that. Never mind. It's almost like you're speaking Spanish.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, call in next week if you if you want to call in earlier. The earlier the better. Next week, if you want to make sure that you get on the show, especially we want to talk to theists, people who believe in God, spirituality, and then we have this week of shows that are going to be awesome. We'd love to hear creationists call in and talk to Aron Ra. We'll be talking about living and purpose and life when you don't have belief on Tuesday with Dave Warnock. Okay, I can stop vamping. It looks like it didn't work out the call thing.
I wonder, can we do a last minute poll?
Sure.
And
there's no rules here.
We had two callers that I'd contrast. One of them was, Shannon in Georgia, who called in to defend his notion of God a little bit, but somewhat to question. And then the last caller, whose name I don't even remember because I scrubbed this stuff from my mind, who called in with the thought experiment on deism. I wonder, no, we can't do this. There's absolutely no way I can word this poll where it's not just self-filleting support from a fan base. So skip it.
Everyone,
I should not have suggested.
We have pretty loaded polls for the Transatlantic Call-In Show, but what I enjoy mostly is how many people shit on me for whether or not they think the polls are good enough, because no one knows that. First of all, the poll may be made by somebody different every week. I literally just copy and paste. And yet there's now a popular narrative amongst the commenters that I'm just the worst poll maker that ever exists. I don't do shit. But I will admit this week's there was an oversight. An either or question was asked with the answers being yes or no. It wasn't a yes or no question. It was a this versus this, and then yes or no, which I think most people, when that happens, assume that the first option is yes and the second option is no. But I admit that one does look a little bit silly. I'm just enjoying the constant stream of commentary abuse since it has come out. I love being a YouTuber. Everybody knows every time they get me in a corner that I just talk about how much I love being a YouTuber, that I love the parasocial things of the people who parasocially hate and parasocially love you. God, it's my favorite fucking part. Really, being a public figure is made for me. Some people won't understand that I'm being sarcastic, but that's okay. So there's no poll going. Patreon.com/calltheline. Now join us over on Aron Ra's channel. And by us, I mean me, though I'm sure that everybody would be excited if Matt decides he wants to join one of these days. I happen to know he has a bunch of choring to do after this, but we'll be going live.
I don't know enough about Mormonism. I know squat about Mormonism. I would be completely useless.
You'd be coming in when it's like, okay, what book in the Book of Mormon are we in? Yeah, it's not a thing you come into the middle of, but it's a funny show, and often we end up getting very derailed, and that's usually my fault. So we're headed over there to Aron Ra's channel to read the Book of Mormon. Matt, last words, final words?
I have no final words. I will word forever.
Hell yeah. I probably should have started playing this a minute ago. If we could sync up like Night at the Roxbury, it'd be amazing, but I think it might be logistically impossible because one of us would have to beat our head out of rhythm to the actual music to pull it off. I can kind of do it because my latency's a little bit lower. It's tough.
I was supposed to take off my clothes on one of these shows, and
okay, bye everyone.